Good morning. All the best. You all look great.
Buenos dias y buenas noches. Goe lai bing nin hao. And a wonderful good morning and good night to one and all. While waiting, we hope you enjoyed the song playing, written by none other than Belizean artist Consigo, commissioned by the Embassy of Belize and the Central American Trade Office in collaboration with the National Institute of Culture and History, NICH, in Belize. As we move on to our distinguished guests, colleagues, panelists, and viewers joining us via live stream on the Ministry of Education or the Embassy of Belize in Taiwan's Facebook page, YouTube, or simulcast on Channel 5, Love FM, Love TV, and the Belize Government Press Office, welcome. The Embassy of Belize in the Republic of China Taiwan's Facebook Live is now open for you to post your questions throughout the conference. Welcome to the first annual Belize Taiwan Academic Conference, hosted by the Embassy of Belize in the Republic of China, Taiwan, in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, Culture, Science and Technology of Belize, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Belize, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of China, Taiwan, and the Central America Trade Office. The theme of this year's conference is Dialogues of Innovation and Ingenuity. The first annual Belize Taiwan Academic Conference will now begin. I am Amador Castillo, proud Orinjoqueño, and currently a senior international affairs and diplomacy student at Ming Chuan University, and I will be your master of ceremonies for today's conference. We begin with the national anthem of Belize, Land of the Free, performed by Mr. Alexander Evans. Thank you, Mr. Evans. Let us now pay reverence to the national anthem of the Republic of China, Taiwan. Thank you for your reverence. Today, we are honored to be joined by very distinguished guests, including the Ambassador of Belize to the Republic of China, Taiwan, Her Excellency Dr. Candice Pitts, the Minister of Education, Culture, Science and Technology of Belize, Honorable Mr. Francis Fonseca, and the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of China, Taiwan, His Excellency Alexander Yue, an ambassador of the Republic of China, Taiwan to Belize, His Excellency David Kwan Chow Chien, the Deputy Secretary General of the International Cooperation and Development Fund, Taiwan Icdf, Dr. Pai Po Lee, and the Executive Director of the Central America Trade Office, Mr. Augusto Liao. On behalf of the organizers, we would like to extend our greatest gratitude to you all for attending this year's conference. First, let us welcome the Ambassador of Belize to the Republic of China, Taiwan, Her Excellency Dr. Candice Pitts, to deliver her welcoming address.
One on Belize, za on Taiwan. Honorable Francis Fonseca, Minister of Education, Belize, His Excellency Alexander Yu, Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, ROC Taiwan, His Excellency David Chen, Ambassador of ROC Taiwan to Belize, Dr. Papa Lee, Deputy Secretary General of International Cooperation and Development Fund, members of BTA, students, friends in Taiwan, Belizeans at home and abroad. I have the great honor of welcoming you to the inaugural Belize-Taiwan Academic Conference. The concept of BTAC was inspired by our Belizean students in Taiwan. During my first meeting with our students as a new ambassador of Belize to ROC Taiwan, I naturally inquired about their studies and experiences. They made a statement that piqued my interest instantly, perhaps because I am also a trained educator. They expressed that they have been working tirelessly and have been investing much in their research and studies and wanted to do more with them after they meet the requirements to obtain a degree. So I immediately suggested, why not organize an academic symposium or conference? This conference, we agreed, would be beneficial not just to students, but to Belize and Taiwan apropos their bilateral relationship. As we are aware, both our nation of Belize and the Republic of China, Taiwan, established diplomatic relations since 1989. Both allies have invaluable achievements to celebrate with respect to their relationship. Among our mutual benefits attendant to our bilateral relations are the many educational opportunities afforded Belizeans by Taiwan each year. Since 1999, when Taiwan awarded its first scholarships to Belizean, the number of scholarships has been increasing steadily. Currently, Belize acknowledges close to 500 Belizean recipients of the Taiwan Scholarship, and this number does not include those students who have embarked on self-financed studies in Taiwan. Belizeans studying in Taiwan are diverse and often represent various communities in Belize. These students and paraprofessionals' academic fields and studies are often informed by their experiences and the lifelong objectives they envision for self and community. Since a major component of education is exposure to different ways of thinking, seeing, and being, these students benefit from and contribute to the Taiwanese society through the different conversations they engage, cultural expressions, academic interest and engagement, their willingness to teach English and learn Mandarin, and their appreciation for all the opportunities their host country affords them. While our students' educational opportunities continue to benefit themselves and our friends in Taiwan, we as Belizeans are aware that we must make concerted efforts to ensure that our home country Belize is a practical beneficiary of our students' education and training. This awareness is the driving force behind our first Belize-Taiwan Academic Conference, which is a collaborative effort between the Embassy of Belize in ROC Taiwan, the Belize-Taiwan Association, the Central America Trade Office, and the Ministry of Education in Belize. The benefits of BTAC are manifold. As you will see, it facilitates a medium through which the larger Belizean public could be exposed to the benefits of our students' research and studies, particularly those Belizeans who would not have had such an exposure otherwise. It places our Belizean students, alumni, and educators in conversations with each other in regards to the applicability of their research and studies to our Belizean society. It helps nurture a culture of research and creates more opportunities for cultural exchange and development between Belize and Taiwan. And since we are at a critical time in our country where there is a desire for improved skill sets and where there is a need for evidence-based decision and policy making, a conference such as this also exposes and highlights the talent, skills, and training of Belizeans. Ultimately, the greater objective of our students receiving any trade or academic studies is to improve the human condition, and particularly so in Belize. Without further ado then, we welcome each of you to the first annual Belize Taiwan Academic Conference. Thank you.
We thank the Ambassador, Her Excellency Dr. Candice Pitts, for her impetuous efforts in today's conference and for her warm welcoming. We will now be taking a group photo. I hope that you have kept your cameras on. If not, we ask that all our special guests, moderators, and panelists turn on their cameras. Backstage, we'll take the photo at the count of 6. Remember to smile. Thank you very much. We will now be having our opening remarks. Minister Fonseca has been experiencing some technical difficulties, so we will have his remarks shortly. First, let us welcome the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of China, Taiwan, His Excellency Ambassador Alexander Yue, for his opening remarks.
Hello there, 大家好. The Honorable Francis Fonseca, Minister of Education, Culture, Science and Technology of Belize, Your Excellency Candice Pitts, Ambassador of Belize to Republic of China, Taiwan, Your Excellency and dear colleague David Chen, Ambassador of the Republic of China, Taiwan to Belize, the Honorable Dr. Li Baibo, Deputy Secretary General of the International Cooperation and Development Fund, Icdf Taiwan, my dear friend Augusto Liao, Executive Director of the Central America Trade Office, CATO, distinguished guests, dear students, ladies and gentlemen, good morning from Taiwan. I'm very pleased to be part of the first annual Belize-Taiwan Academic Conference, themed Dialogues of Innovation and Ingenuity. On behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of China, Taiwan, I would like to extend my appreciation to Ambassador Pitts and the Belizean students in Taiwan for organizing this event. Today, they will share their research insights for numerous fields, including agriculture, education, engineering, gender, healthcare, and history. They will also talk about life in Taiwan and the new perspectives this experience has afforded them. I'm sure that this event will further enhance mutual understanding between the peoples of Taiwan and Belize. This year marks the 40th anniversary of Belize's independence. Congratulations! And the 32nd anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between our nations. Belize is an important ally and trusted partner. Over the years, Taiwan and Belize have enjoyed close cooperation and friendly exchanges across a wide range of domains. And since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have stood side by side to combat and prevent the spread of the virus. Our partnership is built on strong foundations. An emphasis on education is one of the most important values we share. Education nurtures talent, which is the backbone of national development and a prosperous society. Currently, over 100 Belizean students are in Taiwan on scholarships. Their presence here not only enhances the diversity of Taiwan's academic environment, it also stimulates innovative ideas and new perspectives that benefit both Taiwan and Belize. Today's conference is a testament to academic excellence and educational cooperation. I hope this platform will allow more young talents in Belize to learn about their peers' remarkable research accomplishments in Taiwan and the insights they have gained while studying here. Inspiring educational exchanges such as these bolster the already robust friendship between our countries. In closing, I would like to thank the government of Belize, the Embassy of Belize in Taiwan, especially Ambassador Pitts, as well as Icdf Taiwan and GATO for their ongoing efforts to strengthen bilateral collaboration. I also want to congratulate the Belizean students participating in today's conference for their academic achievements. I wish this event every success and wish you all the best of health and happiness. Have a great session.
Thank you, Vice Minister, His Excellency Ambassador Alexander Yue, for your kind words. Let us now welcome the Ambassador of the Republic of China Taiwan to Belize, His Excellency David Quancho Chien, to deliver his opening remarks.
The Honorable Francis Fonseca, Minister of Education, Cultural Science and Technology of Belize, Your Excellency Candice Peet, Ambassador of Belize to the Republic of China, Taiwan, Honorable Alexander Dalei, Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of China, Taiwan, Honorable Dr. Bai Bo-li, Deputy Secretary General of the International Cooperation and Development Fund, Mr. Augusto Liao, Executive Director of the Central American Trade Office, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening from Belize. It is a great honor and a privilege for me to be with you at the first annual Belize-Taiwan Academic Conference. First of all, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to Ambassador Peet and the talented Belizean students for making this conference from a concept to reality. I would also like to express my gratitude to Ambassador Peet for her efforts to promote bilateral relationship between Belize and Taiwan. It has been 32 years since Belize built the diplomatic ties with Taiwan in 1989. Taiwan maintains close and robust relationship with Belize. Over the past 32 years, many projects and programs ranging from education, health, infrastructure, agriculture to climate resilience have been successfully implemented. These projects and programs strengthened our partnership and helped Belize's national development. In our cooperation in education and culture, scholarship program plays a very constructive and important role. Ever since the scholarship program has started in Belize, near 500 Belizean scholarship recipients have studied and acquired their advanced degrees in Taiwan. They not only have the opportunity to experience Taiwanese culture better, but also serve as a Belizean cultural ambassador for Taiwanese people to know more about Belize and enable our two countries and people to grow even closer. Moreover, after their graduation, they come back to Belize to contribute those skills and the knowledge they have learned in Taiwan to the economic growth and the prosperity of Belize. This year marks the 40th anniversary of Belize's independence. Here, I would like to extend our heartfelt congratulations to the people and the government of Belize. As a faithful and a trustworthy ally of Belize, the Embassy of Taiwan looks forward to continuing to work with the government of Belize to further strengthen the bilateral partnership and improve the benefits and the well-being of the Belizean people. Once again, thanks the Embassy of Belize in Taiwan for the invitation. I wish you all the best of good health and happiness.
Thank you, Ambassador, His Excellency David Quancho Chien, for your warm remarks. We now give the time to the Deputy Secretary General of the International Cooperation and Development Fund, Taiwan Icdf, Dr. Bai Po-li, to share his opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency Ambassador Dr. Candice Peet, Honorable Vice Minister Dalei Yi, Your Excellency Ambassador David Chen, also the Executive Director Mr. Liao, dear Speaker, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning in Taiwan and good evening in Belize. On behalf of the Taiwan Icdf, it's a great honor to be here today to participate in the very first Belize Taiwan Academic Conference and share with you the Taiwan Icdf International Development Practice in Belize. Currently, the Taiwan Icdf focus on 6 priority areas of our operations in Latin America: economic development in agriculture and agribusiness, micro, small, and medium enterprises development, public health and medical care, ICT for good governance, climate change and adaptation, and capacity building in higher education and vocational training. The development cooperation between Belize and Taiwan can be dated back to 1991. The year Taiwan dispatched the first agricultural mission to Belize. In the past 3 decades, the Taiwan ICDF has carried out various agricultural projects along the value chains from production, distribution, and marketing in Belize. For example, our technical mission provides technical assistance and training about producing rice seeds, growing fruit trees, cultivate tilapia, breeding sheep, food processing, and papaya exporting. Over the past 10 years, we have also implemented projects in ICT as well as in public health and medicine. These projects are all well recognized with successful results, and we indeed hope for the further cooperation in diverse aspects. Moreover, we provide the financial support through local financial institutions in the regional development bank, such as Chavez. As you all well know, tourism is one of the key industries in Belize. Therefore, we utilize the financial resources to help revitalize the Belize city house, our culture, and downtown. Eventually, we look forward to raising people awareness and appreciation of our colonial heritage and cultural identity. Most importantly, we also invest in human resources, that is education and training. We hope to assist partner countries, including Belize, achieve sustainable development through capacity building. In 1998, we launched the International Higher Education Scholarship program across undergraduate, master, and PhD programs by cooperating with the Prestigious University in Taiwan. Over the past 22 years, there are more than 2,400 scholarship recipients. Among them, most of the recipients, 330 students, are from Belize. We are going to have the 34 new awardees this year. That's why it's my pleasure to be here today. Last but not least, I wish you all a fruitful discussion today and look forward to further deeper cooperation between Belize and Taiwan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary General Dr. Pai Po Lee, for your remarks. At this time, we would like to also extend a special thank you to the Executive Director of the Central America Trade Office, Mr. Augusto Liao, for leading his wonderful team who have offered their valuable support in today's event. Thank you. And this concludes our opening ceremony. Once again, we thank all of our distinguished guests for their warm welcome, and we hope you enjoyed today's conference. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let us get into our first panel for today. Our first panel is on the theme of politics and gender, women as leaders. We give the time to Dr. Laila Estefan, who is a medical doctor pursuing her master's degree in international health at the National Yangming Chiaotong University School of Medicine's International Health Program. Ms. Stefan will be moderating panel 1. The time is yours, Ms. Stefan.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo, for your introduction. I have the pleasure of introducing our first presenter. She is from our nation's capital, Belmopan, and a proud Orange Walkenia. Before taking on her journey in Taiwan, Sadie was a social studies teacher at Eden SDA High School and now currently an English teacher in Taiwan. She graduated with honors from Mingchuan University. In her spare time, she volunteers at various NGOs, empowering women to have a voice. Her long-term goal is to increase Belize's diplomatic alliances and one day become an ambassador. Let us welcome Ms. Sadie Quetzal.
Greetings from Taiwan and good evening, Belize. Today, my thesis is entitled Barriers Women Face When Entering Politics, a Case Study of Belize. The motivation of this paper was to give an update on the current political gender inequality in Belize. As of 2020, the population stands at 50% male and 49.9% female, which is very interesting to note that there's 50%, almost 50-50 of both genders. The statement of the problem. Limited Belizean women have been active in politics through history. For example, in 2020 general elections, only 13 females ran, and among them, only 3 got elected. This means the women voices are few. As seen on Table 1.1 in 2008 through 2021, this is a table comparing throughout the years the Belize general election male and female representation. In 2020, there was a high record of 13 females running for office compared to 75 males. In this, 28 males got elected and 3 females got elected. Due to a by-election in 2020, there is currently now 27 males in office and 4 females in office. The goals and objectives of this research is to identify culture, legal, and social factors hindering Belizean women from entering politics. Also to make suggestions on measures to increase gender equality in Belize. The methodology the researcher used is in-depth interviews. The participant recruitment was women who have lost an election, women who have won an election, Belizean women who have been appointed by the government of Belize, and the researcher also wanted to diversify in getting a perspective on a male government official appointee. As seen on the table, the researcher interviewed 4 United Democratic Party females, 4 PUP candidates, and 1 senator, 1 from the Belize People Front Independent, and the male government official. After analysis, the researcher concluded with teams. For example, culture teams. Team number 1, the definition of culture inequality leads to believe women that there is no such term. Hence, they have limited opportunities. According to the Statistical Institute of Belize, as of September 15, 2020, 11.6% males were unemployed, comparing to females, 17% females were unemployed. The labor force participation, 68.7% were males, and a very low number compared to females, which are 42.4%. Culture stereotypes from both men and women also create a barrier for women entering office. They have the stereotype that women are seen as emotional, men are still at an advantage. Labor Force reported that manager positions of September 2020, only 933 were females, comparing to men that were 1,840. The dominance of this patriarchal and masculinity society also poses a threat for women entering politics. Channel 5 reported a case when a female politician was being sexually attacked for entering politics. Continuing with team for culture teams, the existence of inferiority complex discourages women entering politics. There are several examples given in the House of Representatives and the Senate that men say discouraging comments to females. Even in the campaign trail, women feel that men take dominance when in the campaign trail. Theme 5, Belize is a church-state country, and Belize has no effect in women running for office, but church doctrines plays a role on how society views men and women. Legal factors. Gender quotas are not enforced and not encouraged by government leaders, limiting women in political positions. Men use appointments as women as puppets to manipulate and control them. Women feel that they could be manipulated when appointed. Social factors, limited access to education. Women want more scholarships to be given, and the government of Belize should invest in both male and females to have an equal view on gender. The Icdf is one of the largest scholarships given to Belizeans. As of 2020, 48 scholarships were given, 12 were males and 36 were females. Lack of social institutions discourages women getting into politics. There is lack of babysitting workshops helping women through the political process. The Human Development, Families and Indigenous People Affairs only has 25 registered daycares, which has a maximum capacity of 37 children. Team 3, lack of resources or funds create an obstacle for women when campaigning. Some women get no financing to them financing their own campaign. Also, race influence voter barriers, creating another bias towards women. Belize is known to have a diverse culture background, so this also hinders when voters go to the voting poll. Social media is known as a double-sided sword. Any publicity is good publicity, one of my interviews said. In 2020, Belize passed its first cybersecurity legislation. Therefore, recommendations and suggestions for Belize. Recommendation 1, to implement in the government Belize Constitution campaign financing laws at a national level. Recommendation 2, implement at the National University a political science degree and network with CARICOM and Latin America on different types of governance. Recommendation 3, implement fake news and cybersecurity legislation in the Belize Constitution. And recommendation 4 is to implement social institutions for the increase of gender inequality. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ketzel, for that eye-opening presentation. Our next presenter is originally from Trio Village, Toledo District. She is a football and canoeing captain and recently completed her master's degree in international human resource development from National Taiwan Normal University. Delmi is extremely passionate about gender-related issues and hopes that her research findings can be of reference for policymakers aiming to achieve gender equality in Belize. Let us welcome Ms. Delmi Cornelio.
Thank you, Dr. Laila. Good morning, Taiwan. Good evening, Belize. Today, I will be presenting my research findings on gender role stereotypes, and attitude towards women managers. And this is a comparison study on Taiwan and Belize. Because of time, I try to summarize the results as much as possible. So why this study? We've seen that in recent years, women have taken up space in society. However, there is still a huge underrepresentation, especially in those roles that are traditionally considered male-dominated. And you might ask the question, why Belize in Taiwan? I wanted to analyze the current situation females are facing in a developed nation, Taiwan, in a developing nation, Belize. As if you can take a look at the data, the population size, women makes up like around half of the population in both countries. So if we look at information regarding Belize, there has been no female prime minister since its independence. In the last general elections, and as mentioned earlier, only 16% of women were represented, and only 3 were elected. Belize also occupies the 4th place among all Caribbean countries with the lowest percentage of females in top executive positions. And most of workers in Belize occupy clerical support, service, or sales jobs. Now, if we take a look at Taiwan, they have a female president since 2016, and they have the highest number of women lawmakers in Asia with a 41.59%. They're also the top country in Asia and 8 in the world for equal rights. And 43% of businesses in Taiwan have a female supervisory position. This study includes literature highlighting the benefits of having women managers, supervisors, and employees. And because of my HR background, I decided to focus on women managers. So the summarized purpose of this study and the hypotheses were created based on this to study the relationship between gender and attitude towards women managers. In other words, does males and females think the same about women managers or different? This was also compared in both countries. To study the influence of gender role stereotypes towards women managers in Belize and Taiwan. So literature supported this hypothesis and this relationship. For the methodology, I used reliable scales and tools to analyze the data. So let's go to the most important part of the research, the findings. First, is there a relationship between gender and the attitude towards women managers? There is, according to my studies, and there is a significant relationship. In more details, female respondents from both countries, Taiwan and Belize, showcase a more positive attitude towards women managers compared to the male counterparts. In Taiwan, however, that difference was not negative, was not that small when comparing men and females. Now, when we analyze the results of the influence of gender role stereotypes in both countries, the results showcase that individuals in Taiwan are not influenced by gender role stereotypes. So their attitude towards women managers is not influenced by gender role stereotypes. And this can be seen in the high number of counter stereotypes role models, which are just basically people that are occupying roles that are traditionally considered male roles. So there are more examples to see. In Belize, however, the gender role stereotypes highly influence individuals' attitudes towards women managers. We know this as we see it and we've heard of it, but we actually needed data to prove this, especially when making policies. So gender role stereotypes do influence the way people perceive women managers in Belize. So these issues gender role stereotypes do not only affect women in management positions, but women in general, because this can be a culture attributed issue. So we have to create programs that will start to change the mindset from the grassroots. So the education system is very important in this. First recommendation, this can be in collaboration with Ministry of Education and Women's Department. Create training programs for school principals, teachers, counselors on gender equality to promote in schools. For example, promote more mixed sports teams, mixed work, and avoid gender stereotypes for career days. Yes, a girl can be a firefighter, why not? Also develop campaigns promoting STEM career paths, and this will be beneficial for both boys and girls because we actually need this in general. So it could be like girls in science, male nurses, why not? And number 3, this section is mostly related to the HR and the organizational side. HR department should develop training programs on leadership and gender equality to decrease that stereotype that, women cannot be managers. Next, also human resource department should develop parental leave, and note here I have maternal and paternal leave. Most businesses in Belize have maternal leave, which creates gender stereotypes, meaning that they're trying to say that only women are responsible for taking care of the family. Also creating nursery programs within the organizations to promote work balance regardless of gender. So fathers can also bring their children. And lastly, this goes for the government and policymakers in the entire country. We should make reference to Gender Equity Education Act and Gender Equality in Employment Law. These are laws currently in Taiwan, and they have made tremendous impact when it comes to gender equality. So I also wanted to share some future research directions. Researchers can focus on gender role stereotypes and its effect on women in politics. They should also conduct a study on programs, budget, and performance indicators within Women's Department, which is the organization in charge of foreseeing the gender equality in our country. And also, there should be a qualitative study done to analyze top executives' perception on women mobility within the organization, and what are their views in hiring women for any position within the organization. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. We would like to thank Mr. Stefan for moderating, and thank you to both panelists for your exceptional presentations. A reminder to please post your questions on the Embassy of Belize, Republic of China, Taiwan's Facebook live chat. Please state which presenter you are directing your questions to. Let us now move on to our second panel with the theme Agribusiness and Agricultural Solutions, moderated by Mr. Devon Ramos, who is a business teacher at the Independence High School in the Business and IT Department, and also a proud graduate from the National Taiwan University's Department of Agricultural Economics. Mr. Ramos, the floor is yours.
Thank you, our master of ceremonies. Good day to all our presenters and all our viewers. Kindly allow me to introduce the presenters for this segment of the conference. And our first presenter is Ms. Delaney Braster. Ms. Braster has 10 years of work experience in various industries such as logistics, marketing, banking, and government service. She last worked with the Elections and Boundaries Department when she had to make the big decision to advance her education, thanks to the opportunity offered by Taiwan Icdf. While studying here, she expanded her work experience to the ICT industry with MyTax in the Business Development Division. She believes in taking every experience as a learning opportunity and sharing the value outcomes with others for continued growth and development. Let us welcome Ms. Delaney Braster.
Thank you, Devon. So my topic is simply using smart solutions, meaning artificial intelligence, robotics, sensors, analytics to help Belize become more sustainable and even more so competitive using my international MBA perspective on the matter. From this, I hope to highlight the most critical items for your viewers and key stakeholders. And one of the many things my program has taught us is how to be leaders for change and to do so by solving problems, be it social, economical, high-stake, complex. And following the news, I get to see how COVID flattened the tourism industry significantly, and by extension, the employment and service industries, and of course, the agriculture. On the other hand, I see the government working tremendously, though, to troubleshoot the economy, particularly through the agri-sector, and additional people, Belizeans, developing a self-sustained entrepreneurial attitude like never before. Kudos, by the way. Now, we live in an age of technology where we have all these solutions, but we still struggle, and this begs the question, why? In this research, some of the key words are competitiveness, communication, marketing, collaboration, and automation. So our surface problems then at the tip of the iceberg are climatic, scientific, market-related, and technical. How can these be solved? Well, through ICT and using smart solutions. So 4 research questions were developed, and these are the simple answers based on the data collected and analyzed, majorly from the responses of the participants and minorly from the literature review. Just to expound on 3 and 4, technology enhances the industry by reducing cost and waste with precision, improving quality, increasing output yield, improving efficiency, giving competitive advantage, and so much more. Smart farm cases in developed countries such as Australia and Greece and rapidly developing countries such as Thailand and Vietnam show specific outcomes. For example, in Chile, remote sensors placed in soil for measuring blueberry irrigation reduces water usage by 70%. And these are the impressive things that Smart Solution does. As for question 4, one interesting discussion was envisioning how more young people and women would be attracted to this industry because it does make the job easier, cleaner, as well as safer, and even fun for young people. And throughout the literature review now, a picture of farming was painted, how farms operate traditionally versus intelligently, and the keyword communication and information sharing were stressed. Communication is the key to all relationships, and supply chain relationship is not excluded. So you get to see, though smart farm reduces the need for human capital, it does not eliminate it. And this was one of the concerns a participant had in Belize. What it does have an unlimited need for, however, is broadband network support. And you know, our farms, most of them are remote and connectivity might be poor. So that is an issue that would need to be looked at. And for the purpose of objectivity, one author named Wiggins, he basically argued that if no market opportunity exists, there is no need for any of this. So you have to also focus on the marketing opportunity side of agriculture. And my methodology took a simple qualitative approach. 6 key persons were interviewed. 5 of the 6 were done virtually. 5 of the 6 were males. 3 of the 6 participants were from Belize, 1 from St. Vincent, 1 from the Philippines, and 1 from Taiwan. They represented political leaders, farm holders, CEOs, and agro producers. Notably, 1 participant in Taiwan developed sensors for data analytics, and communication now is not just between farmers and the market, but also it can be between the crop and farmers, and that's interesting. The participant in the Philippines, he trades drones and other solutions, and next step is to explore the data analytics trend to develop the market and industry there in the Philippines. And 1 participant in Belize actually offers a microbial technology with license from Japan that would decrease input costs and increase yield quantity and quality by 2-fold. So they were diverse and experienced in the agriculture sector, ranging from 5 years up until 20+ years. The interview questions were semi-structured. They were 10 comprehensive questions and 3 sub-questions to determine the probability of Belize implementing smart agriculture, and the result for that was an average of 85% in a span of 2 years. Of course, vision and access to capital create challenges, but recently I see one objective is to help Belize SME unlock green climate finance. How this can be disseminated would be the next area of research. And content analysis was done to achieve the results and formulate a discussion. Here are the common themes across the responses stemming from 10 interview questions, and you see keywords repeated here. So winding down now, again, collaboration is important, and while governments need to be the backbone, we have a key role to play as stakeholders to help, especially as it relates to marketing and not just waiting for opportunities to arise, but creating the opportunities for ourselves. And this is just a general implementation model that was devised from the discussions. A pilot phase is necessary given the variation between crops and different models and our local needs. It needs to be adaptable. And this was a framework that would guide the execution of a project like this. So this is the end of my presentation, and I would just like to thank everyone who created or was a part of this event. Thank you.
Much thanks, Ms. Brewster, for your contribution. Now we move on to the next presenter for this segment, who is none other than Ms. Lesbia Cruz. Ms. Cruz is a proud agriculture science teacher at Georgetown Technical High School, originally from Santa Cruz Village in the Stancrick District. She believes that every young Belizean should take the opportunities available to pursue higher education for their personal and professional development. She is a 2021 awardee of the Phi Tau Scholastic Honor Society of the Republic of China as an honorary member for achieving academic excellence. Her future goal is to make contributions to the agricultural sector that can help farmers improve crop yields while maintaining good soil quality. She graduated from the International Master Program of Agriculture from National Chongqing University. Let us welcome Ms. Lesbia Cruz, our next presenter.
Good morning, Belize. Good evening, Belize. Good morning, Taiwan. It is a pleasure for me to present my research findings on the topic influences of linear low density polyethylene microplastics on soil properties, bacterial communities, metabolic potential, and enzyme activities. As we all know, we use plastic and it is a common item in our household and everything that we do. It is extensively used in the building and construction, packaging, electronic, and of course, agriculture. In 2019, the Plastic Europe reported that there was a global production of 370 million tons of plastic with increasing trends every year. Now, what this brings about is the global problem known as plastic pollution, which comes in different types of shapes, sizes, densities. However, one of the most concerning type of plastic pollution is that known as microplastic. And basically, microplastic are just plastic fragments that have broken down from larger plastic debris into smaller plastic ranging from 1 micrometer to 5 millimeter in size. And it can be found in many different types of environments, including marine, terrestrial, freshwater environment, and even so it can be found in living organisms. And studies have shown that agricultural sources may be one of the largest sources of plastic, of microplastic pollutions from the use of plastic mulching, organic fertilizers derived from sewage treatment. Studies conducted showed that in farmlands in China, there is an approximate 1% concentration of microplastic pollution in these farmlands, and approximately 7% of these of microplastic pollution can also be found in Australia in industrial areas. In Europe, there is an accumulation of 63 to 430 tons of microplastics derived from sewage treatment, and in North America, around 44 to 300,000 tons. Therefore, farmland soils are large reservoirs of this microplastic pollution, and through the years, it accumulates. Looking at the Taiwan perspective, Taiwan extensively used plastic mulching, and approximately 20 tons per year, which eventually leads to deduce that microplastic pollution is found in these soils. And how do they get there? Plastic mulching degrade or weather from the exposure of UV light and cutting forces of plowing and tillage, therefore becoming microplastic. And in that process as well, it also releases additives and harmful chemicals into the soil environment. Now, why it is important for us to know and understand this problem is because the presence and accumulation of microplastic in soil can have a direct influence on the soil properties, such as changing the bulk density, water holding capacity, increasing water evaporation and desiccation, cracking in soil. Also, it affects the microbial community by decreasing the microbial diversity in soil and also affecting enzyme activities in soil environment. Therefore, the objective of my research was to identify changes in soil chemical properties, to observe changes in enzyme activity, to characterize bacterial community potential, and to evaluate the influence it has on bacterial diversity and community composition through next generation sequencing or DNA analysis. For this experiment, it had 4 different treatments with 3 different replicates, and it had different concentrations of microplastic added into soil at 0, 1%, 7%, and 14% on 700 grams of soil. And from this experiment, different soil analyses were conducted to analyze these changes on a 70-day incubation period. the results from the soil properties shows that microplastic at high concentrations in soil, it decreases the soil exchangeable cations. It also decreases the CEC in soil. It increases pH and it increases the EC in soil. Now, these changes in pH and EC and chemical properties overall have a direct influence on microbial organism abundance and enzyme activities by microbial organisms, and most importantly, it has an effect on the nutrient availability for the growth of plants. The enzyme activities are used as indicators of rapid changes in soil or soil environment and how it has on the organisms caused by the environmental stress. And the results show that the enzyme activities change at the high concentrations of this microplastic pollution in soil, showing that the metabolic activities are changed by microplastic at high concentration by increasing or decreasing the fungal and bacterial communities, changing the environment that is occurring in this soil and affecting the overall soil health. Now, when looking more closely at the bacterial communities in terms of the phylum level, what is happening to the soil organisms, the results show that the microplastic has an effect on organisms that are involved in the degradation of pollutants in soil. They have an influence such as decreasing the population of organisms that degrade plastic overall. And also it has a significant influence on organisms that are involved in carbon utilization and nitrogen assimilation in soil. And these changes in bacterial community structure are concerning because these particular organisms, families, phylums, they have important ecosystem functions relating to the nutrient cycling and the overall soil health, which promotes plant growth. The changes at high concentration is alarming because future accumulations of microplastic in soil can provide further knowledge on how these significant effects affects the multifunctionality of soil environment and affects soil quality. Overall, this research provides on the importance to expand on commence monitoring of microplastic contamination in our terrestrial environments for agricultural land uses and other uses as well. And it shows that it is imperative to reduce the inputs of microplastics into the soil environment. I would like to say thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please ask at the end.
Okay.
Thank you.
Much thanks for your contribution, Ms. Cruz. We move on now to the next presenter, who is none other than Mr. Solomon Antonio Jr. Mr. Antonio is the only Garifuna PhD candidate and researcher at Taiwan's #1 research institute, Academia Sinica. He was an assistant lab technician and adjunct chemistry and biology lecturer at the University of Belize. He hopes to one day use his experience, knowledge, and skills he gained to increase the plant pathology and biotechnology capacity in Belize. He also plans to liaise with relevant stakeholders to develop our tertiary institutions, science, and agricultural programs to be more research-oriented, and ultimately assist in the management of our agricultural resource. With all that said, please welcome Mr. Solomon Antonio Jr., our next presenter.
Thank you, Mr. Defon. Good morning, Taiwan. Good afternoon, good night, Belize. The title of my research is The Role of NADPH Oxidase-Mediated ROS in Mitochondrial Status in Arabidopsis tapetum. And my project is significant because reproductive products contribute approximately 80% of crop yield, and thus the crop yield is mainly dependent on successful sexual reproduction, which requires viable pollen and ovule. So this makes fertility highly important for agriculture. The production of pollen is sensitive to different stresses, such as nutrients in the soil, the temperature, and so forth. So here, the organism that I'll be using from my research is Arabidopsis thaliana, specifically looking at the flower. And so under the microscope, I dissect the flower and I remove the anther because I'm specifically looking at one section of the anther, which is the innermost section here, the red tapetum, which is where the pollen develops. So here's a short video showing the dissecting of the flower bud. under the microscope. So usually I do about 300 of these for the month. So like I mentioned, the tapetum is the focus of our study, and the tapetum function is required for pollen development. And this is important because the tapetum transfers nutrients such as sugar to the pollen and also precursor for the pollen wall development. And it also helps in the development of the pollen throughout the process. So the cells in the tapetum are very extremely metabolically active in order to support pollen development. And so there is a high energy requirement. And so to support this high energy requirement, there are plenty of mitochondria found in the tapetum, as can be seen here in the cross-section of the anther under transmission electron microscope. So, like I said, the tapetum function is tightly associated with mitochondrial function. And this is important because cytoplasmic male sterile lines show that disruption of mitochondrial function causes abnormal tapetum function and therefore leads to pollen abortion. And most CMS lines have defect in tapetum function, but none in the vegetative tissue. So this suggests that the function of the tapetum is much more sensitive to mitochondrial defects. So the mitochondrial amount needs to be properly regulated and adjusted to ensure that the proper tapetum function. So the focus of my work is what is called the respiratory burst oxidase homolog, or RBOH for short. And RBOHs have been shown to be important for developmental roles in distinct plant organs and tissues throughout Arabidopsis. My research is specifically focusing on RBOHE, which is in the anther and pollen development. So like I mentioned, tapetum requires mitochondria for proper functioning. And mitochondrial biogenesis and dynamics are affected by RS levels. And the RBOHE plays a critical role in this regulation process. So the objective of my work is to investigate whether and how RBOH-mediated RS play a role in regulating mitochondrial biogenesis and elimination in tapetum. So from previous work that we've done in the lab, we've seen that there is a change in the ROS level during the development of the anther, which can be seen here by the graph. And there's a significant difference in the ROS level, specifically at the VP stage. So the VP stage is very important for my study, so it's a major focus of my research. So what we also see is that the change in RBOHE expression alters the ROS in tapetum. And the change also affects the mitochondria. So as we can see here, during the development of the pollen, we see that there is the increase in the, 1 minute. So as we see here, we can see that there is a change in the mitochondria density throughout the development of the pollen. So there's an increase in mitochondria number, however, there's a decrease in mitochondria size. So this can be seen here where we have at the VP stage, there are elongated mitochondria and a lot of fragmented mitochondria at the next stage. So the mitochondria density and morphology in tapetum changes during development. So we also see that there is a change in the expression of RBOHE that affects the ROS as well as the mitochondria density. And this is very important because if we have different mutant lines with different ROS levels, we see that there is a difference as well in the mitochondria density between these lines. So the significance specifically is at the VP stage where we see in the wild type, there is this pattern. However, in the plant with less ROS, we see that there is less mitochondria, and a mutant with more ROS, we see that there is increased mitochondria density. So the rationale for the study is that throughout the development of the ROS, we see that there is mitochondria fluctuating in the size, as well as ROS fluctuation throughout the development process. And so we see that if this fluctuation happens, it can lead to aborted pollen, therefore no production of seeds and so forth. So the changes in the mitochondria status and morphology correlate with the changes in ROS. And it has also been reported that the ROS plays a role in regulating this mitochondria change throughout the development of the process. And we know that RBOH is involved in regulating the ROS, which is mainly contributed by the tapetum. So the hypothesis of my study is that the tapetum-enriched RBOH-mediated ROS plays a critical role in mitochondrial biogenesis and elimination in the tapetum by regulating cellular redox status, mitochondrial ROS, and autophagic activity. So to prove this, we have 4 aims for my study. The first and second aim are looking at how the RBOH-mediated ROS will affect the cytosolic redox status, as well as the mitochondrial status. And the third aim is determining the role of RBOH-mediated arrest on autophagy and mitochondrial elimination. And the fourth aim is to profile how the RBOH-mediated ROS affects transcriptional regulation in the epithelium. So the first and second aim is investigating the mediated ROS on cytosolic and mitochondrial ROS using the ROGFP tool, where we can look at it under a fluorescent microscope and see that there is fluctuation in the redox status. The third aim looks at the role of RBOH in autophagy, which is the degradation of damaged organelles, such as mitochondria, due to some stress, such as heat or low iron in the soil. So we want to see how does the ROS affect that. And the third part of this is that we were using the ATGA protein, which we can be tagged with the fluorescence to see if there is removal of mitochondria during the development process. And the fourth aim is gathering RNA from the anthers and then using the RNA-seq to develop a hub and further analysis of the effect of RBOH so we can see the different phenotypes. So the significance of my research is to see that during ROS fluctuation during development, we know that that affects the pollen, and then we know that that can lead to pollen abortion. So mitochondria is vital for the function of the tapetum, essential for viable pollen. And the RBOH-mediated ROS influences cytosolic and mitochondrial ROS and affects the autophagy. So the overall significance of the research is to provide not only basic knowledge regarding ROS, but also to provide information to facilitate the improvement of pollen production and crop yield for the generation of male sterile lines. This can be a powerful tool for breeding and production of hybrid seeds. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, presenters, for a very insightful panel. And a special thank you to Mr. Ramos for moderating. This concludes our second panel of the conference. Please post your questions on our live Embassy of Belize, Republic of China, Taiwan Facebook chat. Please state which presenter you are directing your questions to. At this point, we will be having a 5-minute intermission, at which time it will be used as a question and answer segment in regards to the Icdf and Mufa scholarships. Ms. Delmi Cornelio and myself will be answering your questions. Delmi, tell us, what questions have you collected about the Icdf scholarship?
Thank you, Mother. Yes, so earlier we got a question from one of our viewers, and the question is, how far will Taiwan push Belizeans to be excellent in academics? My answer to that would be, this is a perfect example. We are developing research skills and collecting data that later might be beneficial for Belize. Another common question that has been asked is, what is the difference between Icdf and Mufa? Okay, so one of the biggest difference between the two is that Icdf has a set list of universities and programs that you can apply to. All these programs are in English, and you cannot apply to any program outside this list. On the other hand, Mufa, you can apply to any program, and it can be in English or Mandarin, it's up to you, and in university, but you have to do a 1-year Mandarin course before you can start your degree. Another question, Amador, is like, when are these scholarship applications open? So usually the applications are open the first week in January, and they're closed around mid-June. And what are, another question that was asked, what are the documents that you might need to apply for an Icdf scholarship? So general documents, before I go into that, I would say that you have to be careful because each university have their own requirements. So it's imperative for you to go to the university program and search for the requirements. And for the general application, Icdf application, you need an Icdf form, and you need to fill it out, and you need a photocopy of your highest diploma, an original transcript, and both of these have to be certified by the Minister of Education and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You need 2 recommendation letters, you need a CV, resume, a photocopy of your passport. Amador, can you tell us a little bit more on questions regarding Mufa?
Okay, thank you very much, Delmi. One of the most common questions that we receive on the Mufa scholarship, again, as you said, what is the difference between the Mufa and the Icdf? And I think one of the major differences for the Mufa scholarship regards the financial responsibility of that scholarship. Unlike the Icdf scholarship, where you get someone who is in charge of your finances and helps you through the process, for the Mufa scholarship, you are entirely responsible for the finances and all financial obligations that you have. So whenever you get the scholarship stipend for every month, that money is what you use to pay your school, your books, your rent, food, any other expenses that you have come out from that money. So it is a bit more demanding, or it demands a bit more responsibility in that regard. Another question is, when is the application period for the Mufa scholarship? Every year, the application period is from February 1st to March 31st. And where can you find that application form? It can be found at the Embassy of Taiwan in Belize's website. And the application form is there. Again, if you have any questions throughout the process, the Belize Taiwan Association's page on Facebook is always open for information and for more questions, and you can also contact the embassy. Now, in terms of the Chinese language program, some people ask if it is mandatory. It is highly regarded that you take the year of Mandarin classes in order to fully adjust to the country. One of the major reasons for that is that for the Mufa scholarship, unlike the Icdf, you are not limited to specific programs at specific schools. You can apply to whichever school in Taiwan for whichever you would like to pursue, being in Chinese or English. So those are the information that we have for today, and we would like to remind the audience that you can also visit the Belize Taiwan Association page and the Taiwan Embassy in Belize's websites for more information and to ask any other questions. But thank you very much, Delmi, for the information.
Thank you to the audience too for tuning in.
Yes, thank you very much. And with that, I would like to welcome you once again to all our viewers joining us via live stream on Facebook or YouTube, or simulcast on Channel 5, Love FM, Love TV, or the Belize Government Press Office to the first annual Belize Taiwan Academic Conference themed Dialogues of Innovation and Ingenuity. Let us move on to our third panel. Our third panel for today is themed National Identity, History, Art, and Culture. We have Ms. Myra Leiva, who received her master's degree in international affairs at Mingchuan University, and who will be serving as the moderator for this panel. Ms. Leiva, the time is yours.
Thank you, Amador. We are pleased to now introduce Ms. Melody Wagner from Belize District. Melody recently completed her International Masters in Culture and Creative Industries. She has an undergraduate degree from the University of Belize with a focus in English and a Global Development Studies minor. Her passion and interest in community work and writing led her to work in journalism for 2 years. During that period, she actively pursued her interest in community development through volunteering while being committed to her role in the Belizean creative industry as tenor for Pandemonium Steel Band. Through her studies, she hopes to transform the Belizean and Caribbean creative industries while also feeding her interest in event planning, education, art, and culture. The creative communicator is a proud advocate for community development, youth leadership, sustainable development, and identity formation. Let us now welcome Ms. Melody Wagner.
Thank you, Myra, for that relevant and timely introduction. Today, I'll be talking about sustainable steel bands in Belize. To begin, in terms of sustainability, to contextualize that concept, I use a quotation from Ronald Reagan that says the best social program is a productive job for anyone who is willing to work. And that kind of contextualizes what I mean by sustainability. I'm talking about continuity as well as economic impact. An overview of my study, it is an evaluation of the way music is used to address issues in at-risk communities. It argues that in the case of Pandemonium, the lack of a long-term outcome influences the program's overall success. I conclude that a collaboration with members of the creative economy would enable capacity development and expose participants to sustainable opportunities. In terms of a background, so the PAN was developed in Trinidad in the 1930s, and it immediately grew international connection and eventually made its way to Belize in the 1960s. Pandemonium was established in 2013 through a joint initiative between Niche and Restore Belize, who got funding from UNICEF. Under the theme, Beat a Pan, Not a Man, it targeted at-risk youths from the Belize city area. My study objectives. I want to understand pandemonium and the history of steel pans, identify limitations and challenges pandemonium faced, and identify ways to incorporate income opportunities to its members. As such, I developed the following research question. To what extent do pandemonium members participate in the Belizean creative economy, and how can their participation be improved? I have 5 auxiliary questions that touch into other areas, such as the purpose of the band, the economic sustainability impact that it has, the interest of members to develop their skills and earn an income, and moreover, the existing programs that can facilitate this, and finally, how functional the Belizean creative economy is. You might be asking at this time, why the PAN, and what's the benefit of this process? So my literature review, I contextualize that response into 3 sections. The first, I talk about social programming and steel pan and its connections and its benefits. And I focus now on this case that is proposed by Bowie, a Nigerian artisan and entrepreneur, who identifies the benefits of vocational programming attached to steel pan and how it can benefit youths and securing income and jobs. In the area of education, the PAN is a pedagogical tool that can expose its players to a wide range musical career because of its connections to community, creativity, and experimentation. Moreover, I was able to identify that in 2017 alone, Trinidad and Tobago was able to report revenues of $1.5 million from the PAN economy. So clearly then, not only is the PAN economically sustainable, but it is something that it is tied to culture and is able to create that platform that I'm discussing. In terms of my research approach, I use a pragmatic approach which ties together both qualitative and quantitative elements, and I use the process of triangulation to assure validity in my research. I conduct interviews, issue questionnaires, and a textual analysis throughout the process of my data analysis. In terms of my discussion, I separate it into 2 sections. Internal and external factors. And through my interviews, I interviewed administrators of Pandemonium, the Pandemonium program, as well as members to identify their interests. Under administrative sector, I was able to identify the major challenge, which was the definition of the band and its purpose. So it was initially a music education platform and not a band. So it wasn't intended to earn a profit. And so when the attempts were made to identify ways to earn an income, it was noticed that the creative ecosystem in Belize is not something that is very sustainable. And then moreover, other challenges that the program faced was in terms of commitment from members, disciplinary challenges because of the target population that was within the program, as well as the idea of what an at-risk person should represent and should look like. That was some of the challenges, as well as consistency with funding, administrative challenges. There were challenges on both the programmatic and the overall directing of the program. And they identified changes in the partner institutions and their administration as some of the challenges that they face as an overall success. And then among other things, they talked about communication and professionalism as some of the things that members and the overall program was unable to do. On the membership level, I focused on 5 questions from the questionnaires that I issued to them. And I was able to identify that not only were members interested in learning more about the instrument, but they were also expressing an interest in dedicating the time necessary to learn more. And in terms of the limitations that they recognized they had, the ignorance was a main factor that was being presented by respondents, saying that they weren't aware of the market that was able to be presented to them. They didn't have the confidence to perform as an independent performer, and they didn't know how to market themselves as an independent performer. Finally, in terms of the creative industry, the key responses that I received had to do with international connections, and some of the conversations revolved around carnival destination and marketing Belize as such, the gig market and economy, kind of identifying ways for musicians to cross borders and perform in those spaces, connections to the diaspora and having them kind of help with pivoting and promoting the country as such, and talking about, you know, connecting the tourism industry to this idea. And then in terms of vocational programming, I was able to identify what procedures needs to happen for the country to adopt such a program. And then in terms of music literacy, they talk about, you know, their rights and how to secure that. I delve a bit into the cultural policy of the nation, which was actually developed in 2016, and it identifies ways that the creative economy is beneficial to the country's overall economic success. Moreover, it also talks about, you know, providing funding and economic incentives for creatives to be able to develop and technical support for them. So not only was I able to identify that the country recognizes the potential of the creative industry, but I'm able to see that this platform or project that I propose is something that the country is willing to support. In conclusion, I present the following as key areas that Pandemonium needs to invest and address in order to move forward. Music education was key, international participation and connections, vocational education, solid management policy, and overall connections to the music industry. This is a map that talks about some of the programmatic things that needs to be introduced for it to be successful. On the administrative and programmatic level, these are some things like terms of clear policies, adding a social work to address behavioral issues within the group, and maybe even expanding the target group to incorporate more persons, presenting scholarship opportunities and making new partnerships for the program. And moreover, in terms of the ecosystem that needs to be present, I have it vertically talking about the ecosystem and the creative carnival economy, creative industries, and steel plant construction and sales that could help with sustaining the initiative. Finally, I based on the interview that I conducted with a person from Ministry of Education that talks about the creative ecosystem, the vocational programming, that exists in Belize, this is how I foresee that being implemented in the country. This is a 5-year plan that talks about establishing that feeder program that can facilitate that change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melody, for your enlightening presentation. Our next presenter is from San Ignacio, Cayo. He was a student activist in Belize and is currently an English teacher in Taiwan. He believes that as young people, when we educate our minds, we reveal our power. His long-term goal is to serve his people to the best of his abilities. Currently enrolled in the International Master's Program for International Studies at the National Chengchi University, let's welcome Mr. Guillermo Berganza.
Thank you, Myra. Good night, Belize. Good morning, Taiwan. The title of my research today is Colonial Legacies and Democratic Development in Latin America and the Caribbean, from 1982 to 2018. So I will highlight the introduction, theoretical perspectives, hypothesis, research design, and finally my results. So the general research question that I aim to address is, what explains the cross-national variation in levels of democracy? Using a structural perspective that focuses on the impacts of colonial legacies, the more specific question is, how did colonial legacies affect the current levels of democratic development of Latin America and the Caribbean? Now, for the theoretical perspectives, the literature has exposed the effectual relationship between colonial legacies and contemporary outcomes. It is centered on the different aspects of British and Spanish colonial societies, and has shown that British colonial legacy had a different effect on post-colonial societies by establishing liberal institutions that tended to produce higher levels of democracy and social development in the long run. On the other hand, they have discussed the effects of mercantilist institutions in colonial Latin America with a tendency to produce more authoritarian systems in comparison to the British. These studies have concluded that the levels of colonial development, the identity of the colonizer, the environment, indigenous population, colonial ideologies, and factor endowments have all had significant effects on the development trajectories of Latin America and the Caribbean. The colonial identities of this study are based on two economic modes, mercantilism and liberalism. Spanish mode of colonization is based on the idea of mercantilism, while British mode is based on the idea of liberalism. Mercantilist and liberal powers impose different levels of colonialism in territories with similar levels of pre-colonial development. I also rely on Perez Linyang and Mainwaring's theory of regime legacy, which was built on the concept of path dependence, but it is not as deterministic. It suggests that once a country has developed a particular regime, like democracy or autocracy, it is often too costly to change a system, such as like path dependence. So in other words, the theory of regime legacy takes into consideration that a pre-existent system is reproduced over time, and that this reproduction enhances the ability for its prolonged existence. So my hypothesis, it's compared to countries with Spanish colonial legacies, countries with British colonial legacies tend to have higher levels of democracy. However, the current studies are as exclusive as they are incomplete. So to further elaborate on my hypothesis, I have shown that British colonial legacies produce a more tolerant environment for social mobilization. Thus, civil society tends to be stronger and increases levels of democratic development. My research design. To test my two hypotheses regarding the relationship between colonial legacies and post-colonial development, I utilize a mixed method approach. For the quantitative analysis, I employ a large N statistical analysis using country-level data of 33 Latin America and Caribbean countries from 1982 to 2018. My dependent variable is level of democracy, which is operationalized as a composite index of the Freedom House measures for political rights and civil liberties. My main independent variable is British colonial legacy, coded 1 if a country was colonized by a British Empire, and 0 otherwise. For the qualitative analysis, I conducted a comparative historical analysis for Belize and Guatemala. Though through the pattern matching procedure, the comparative historical analysis examines how colonial legacies shape the environment for social mobilization and how social mobilization affects various levels of democracy in Belize and Guatemala. So we move on to the results. The empirical finding, which is the most important of my research, is that it has proven that a country that used to be a British colony tends to have a higher level of democracy. Former British colonies tend to provide more voices for their citizens in the political process, as they are more likely to hold their governments accountable, have a higher quality of the rule of law, and are more tolerant towards civil society organizations' activities relative to other former European colonies. Now for the case study, Belize was colonized by Britain and Guatemala by Spain. Guatemala inherited an authoritative legacy from the Spanish Empire as it elaborates a hierarchical class and racial structure that produced caudillos or military leaders after independence. Belize, on the other hand, inherited coherent administrative, juridical, and police institutions that provide the basic infrastructures for functioning markets, an enforcement of the rule of law, a provision of public goods, and education. The results of my qualitative analysis concerning the social mobilization. So one of the longest and most important social movements in Guatemala was the guerrilla factions, while in Belize, it was mainly the unions. I have observed several instances concerning how social mobilization affected democratic levels in both countries from 1982 to 2018. But for now, I will mention just two. So the BNTU organized a protest in 2016 at Belmopan City with its 3,000 members against the government's decision to defer a 3% salary increase and, of course, corruption during that time. This is important because it shows how, with increased social mobilization, the government of Belize at the time was pressured to expand accountability and political representation by creating, as some of us may remember, the Senator Select Committee, the Integrity Commission of Belize, and the installment of a new senator to represent civil society. I would like to say that during the recent BNTU demonstrations, I noticed that many people were saying that they never stood up against corruption, but I mean, it is obviously not true. So in 2017, many organizations in Guatemala protested in the street against corruption and demanded the resignation of President Jimmy Morales, but he refused, and he also ended UNCAC. This is important because it shows the more hostile reactions of the Guatemalan government towards social mobilization. So, in retrospect, Belize has a higher level of democracy than Guatemala, a position that is reflective of its enduring liberal colonial institutions that, in the long run, fostered a better political environment for governments to respond more positively towards the demands of its civil society. Thank you.
Let us thank Mr. Leyva for his assistance and both presenters on a job well done on their research. Please post your questions on our live Embassy of Belize, Republic of China, Taiwan Facebook chat. Please state which presenter you are directing your questions to. We now open the floor for our fourth panel, comprising two parts, themed Mechanical Engineering and Healthcare Systems. For the first segment, we have moderator Ms. Shush Eknovello, who is currently enrolled in the PhD program of the Department of Mechanical Engineering at Kunshan University of Science and Technology. Ms. Shush Eknovello, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Castillo. Well, everyone, welcome to the Mechanical Engineering panel for today. Our presenter for this Mechanical Engineering panel hails from Belmopan. He has obtained 2 master's degrees, the first being from Kunshan University of Science and Technology in the field of Mechanical Engineering, and the second being from National Cheng Kung University in the field of Energy Engineering. He is currently a PhD candidate at Kunshan University of Science and Technology in the field of Mechanical and Energy Engineering. His research fields comprise of vibration analysis and also of artificial intelligence. To date, his most incredible accomplishment has been winning the Taiwan 2019 Hiwin master's thesis competition, and it is actually the most prestigious prize in mechanical engineering in Taiwan. So everyone, please let's welcome Mr. Wani Morgan.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so if you take a quick look around, you'll notice that much of the materials are made out of plastic, and much of these plastic materials are produced via injection molding process. The injection molding process industry is very, very important, as it is forecasted to have a global market. Sorry? Hello, can you guys hear me? Please. Hello?
Yes, you can. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. So the global market share is forecasted to reach $233 billion by 2023. Taiwan, one of the world's leaders in plastic injection molding industry, has a global market share of $1.42 billion. So the Taiwan's Ministry of Science and Technology has been investing substantial research funds into developing the injection molding technology. Roughly, the injection molding process is a process in which molten material is injected into a shaping mold, cooled, solidified, and thereafter ejected, as shown by the figure. The clamping system is very important, as it is responsible for the opening and closing of the shaping mold. And the clamping system must hence be properly lubricated in order to reduce wear. As shown by the figure below, when lubricant is added to the clamping system, it separates the metal to metal contact. However, as cycle number progresses, this lubricating barrier starts to deteriorate, eventually leading to metal contact and wear, and thereafter machine downtime, which is not wanted in industry, as if the machine goes down, we lose money. So the current industrial approach is to they rely on the machine operator's experience in order to determine the optimal time to relubricate the system. However, this method is not robust and it leads to over-lubrication and waste in lubricant, as the machine operator does not want to run the machine to failure. However, if they fail to relubricate at the optimal time, they tend to damage the toggle clamping system and lose money. Now, our method uses vibration analysis to monitor the changes in the machine's vibration in order to efficiently use the lubricant while maintaining the integrity of the toggle clamping system. Much of my research was conducted on the CLF60TX, as shown in the figure on the screen. My experimental setup, what I did, I mounted an accelerometer, as shown in blue, onto the stationary pin of the toggle clamping system, and then I mounted a strain gauge onto the tie bar of the injection molding machine to see the profile. I then completely lubricated the toggle clamping system, and I ran several cycles. I ran the machine, and I relubricated at points indicated to me by the machine operator that this is the time that he will relubricate the system. I then took all this data and performed mathematical modeling and to figure out if there's a relationship between lubricant degradation and the vibrational profile of the machine. The figures on the screen shows the experimental setup that I carried, but what is important is in figure B, this is the accelerometer used to collect the vibrational data. The data from this accelerometer was then streamed into the computer as shown in figure C, and I conducted this experiment, this method. After filtering through many mathematical models, I came across the shock response spectrum, which was suitable for analyzing the transient response generated by the injection molding machine during its operation. The shock response spectrum simply models how single degree of freedom system responds to a base input or a base excitation. And this base excitation can be modeled using ordinary differential equation. And from that, we're able to plot an acceleration frequency profile. Using this acceleration frequency profile, we can extract the energy dissipated by each shock whenever the injection molding machine opens. And then we can estimate our shock response indicator, which determines the health of the lubricating condition. The important findings from my results, I broke it down into two steps. In the first year, I did the study on the CLF60TX, and then I later validated the study on the CLF230, and in order to prove that the finding was not just a one-time occurrence. I found out that whenever you relubricate the toggle clamping system, the vibrational amplitude is relatively low, as shown by the green arrows, the low failure rate at the beginning of the cycle. However, as cycle number progress from to increasing numbers, the vibrational amplitude, the yellow arrow, starts to increase, meaning that your condition of your lubricant starts to fail. Please note that the dotted black lines were the points that I added lubricant to the toggle clamping system. If you notice, upon the addition of lubricant to the toggle clamping system, the vibrational amplitude rapidly fell back to its baseline. And then it once again had its normal performance, and then later the amplitude gradually raised during increasing failure, and upon the addition of lubricant once more, the vibration went to its baseline. This finding is very important as it is in agreement with the commonly published bathtub curve. The bathtub curve shows that lubricant goes through a process when it's being used. It has an early run-in period or an infant mortality rate, followed by a normal life performance. The normal life is where it runs through its perfect operation. And finally, its end of life wear out, where it is starting to fail. A perfect relubrication regime would relubricate the system between the low failure rate and the increasing failure rate, the green arrows and the yellow arrow. In conclusion, the plastic injection molding industry is rapidly growing, and they're moving away from the need of a on-site human operator to more autonomous operation, Industry 4.0. And through my study, we were able to show that the shock response algorithm was suitable for analyzing the transient vibrational signatures generated as the lubricating condition deteriorated from cycle to cycle. Just an outlook of my future work, this research has been patented by my professor and myself, and now we're collaborating with Mufa, which is one of Taiwan's largest producers of plastic injection machinery, in order to validate that this study is suitable for all plastic injection molding machines. The ultimate goal is to develop a real-time standalone system as shown in Figure 2 that can be commercialized for the plastic injection industry. Once again, thank you very much for your time, and that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morgan, for sharing your significant findings. And thank you, Ms. Novello, for moderating. For the second segment of this panel, we have Ms. Stephanie Catherine Rivero, a senior medical officer at San Ignacio Community Hospital and current radiology resident in the medical imaging department at Far Eastern Hospital in Taiwan. Ms. Rivero will be our moderator for this segment. The time is yours, Ms. Rivero.
Thank you very much, Mr. Castillo. I am now pleased to introduce Ms. Tracy Quetzal. Ms. Ketzel is a proud Belizean, originally from Orange Walk Town. She is a registered nurse who worked at the Western Regional Hospital emergency room for about 7 years. She was involved in the Belmopan Palliative Volunteer Care and Alpha and Omega Church Children's teacher. After pursuing her master's degree in international nursing, she returned to Belize to work at the University of Belize in the Faculty of Nursing, Allied Health and Social Work Department. She decided to embark on a PhD degree in Global Health and Health Security at Taipei Medical University. She hopes that her research findings can be of reference for policymakers aiming to improve treatment adherence among people living with HIV in Belize. Congratulations on your doctoral path, Tracy. We now welcome our next presenter, Ms. Tracy Quetzal. Ms. Quetzal, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Rivero. Greetings from Taiwan to everyone in Belize and in Taiwan as well, and distinguished guests. Today, my topic is HIV disability, treatment adherence during COVID-19 disruption among people living with HIV in Belize. My study is still in the preliminary stage. I have yet to do my data collection, so my outline will be introduction, methods, and references. Currently, some brief background on HIV. Currently, there is about 3,839 people living with HIV in Belize. Our main goal is to get this population to achieve a 90% treatment adherence level. The benefits of getting a 90% adherence level will help them to achieve viral suppression, decrease viral transmission, and increase CD4 levels. Additionally, the prevalence of 1.25 can be found among between the ages 15 to 49 years of age. Geographical distribution shows that the percentage between Belize, Cayo, and Stan Creek are relatively high in these districts. Additionally, my study will be looking at HIV disability. What is HIV disability? I would just like to emphasize that it is not a permanent disability. I am not looking at disability as a permanent disability. It is as a result that the disease transition from being a terminal disease to a chronic disease. People are now aging with HIV, along are developing comorbidities such as diabetes, hypertension. they are experiencing health-related challenges, and this health-related challenges is known as disability. Disability can further be framed as any symptom impairment, example, fatigue, difficulties with day-to-day activities such as difficulties doing household chores, challenges to social inclusion at work, schools, or other social roles. Challenges of uncertainty, maybe they have worries about financial worries. Additional literature review has shown that HIV disability has a significant association with decreased adherence to ART medications. Now for COVID and HIV treatment adherence, we have seen through literature review that clinical attendance have been greatly affected. Studies done in adults in Uganda show that 76% of clients indicate that COVID-19 negatively impacted travel to HIV clinics. COVID-19 also contributed to already existing disparities, and we can see that in insecurity of food, house, and employment has increased during COVID-19 pandemic. My primary objective is to describe the HIV disability condition and to quantify its relationship with treatment adherence in Belize. My secondary objective is to describe the consequence of COVID-19 disruption on HIV treatment adherence in Belize. I'm going to do a case control study design, meaning that I will have two groups of individuals. Case, which are called the non-adherent, will be the case, defined as missing either 2 or more follow-up appointments, 1 or more missed ART refills as prescribed from the time of the study. Now my adherent group will be my control, attending all follow-up appointments or collecting all ART medications as prescribed. Both of them have to meet an inclusion criteria, such as they have to be between the ages 21 to 80 years old, on ART medication for at least 3 months. My exclusion criteria will look at currently classified as WHO clinical stage 4. This is the severely symptomatic stage. Missing clinical records or having incomplete data will be excluded. Participants will be excluded if they are pregnant. Patients who enroll on ART less than 3 months. Now my sample size was calculating using the EpiInfo TM7 software StatCut program, and that yielded a study participants of 486. I've selected based on socio-demographic factor, socio-demographic and resource allocation, Southern Regional Hospital and Western Regional Hospital as my treatment facilities. The case and control will be distributed with Southern Regional having 60% of my sample population and Western Regional holding 40% of my sample population. I will be doing an online survey using SurveyCake. It will have 5 survey sections. Personal characteristic or demographic section was developed by myself, the researcher, and I've adapted the other sections. The HIV disability section was adapted, and this is the section that the study participants will need to answer as well. COVID-19 disruptions, and under treatment adherence section, I'll be not only looking at medication adherence, because treatment encompasses not only medication, but also nutrition and other factors. So that's why I'm also looking at adherence self-efficacy. All of these sections have been validated, and the validity and reliability test has been found. My research questions will be answered using statistical analysis such as logistic regression and t-tests. That will assist me to answer the question to know the association between HIV disability and HIV adherence, controlling for socio-demographic and medical information factors in Belize. Descriptive statistics will assist me to be able to describe the HIV disability conditions and the COVID-19 disruption conditions. Logistic regression and t-tests will also be used to understand the consequences of COVID-19 disruptions on HIV treatment adherence in Belize. The ethical consideration, I have gotten approved from the Taipei Medical University International Review Board currently. My other step is getting it approved by the Ministry of Health and Wellness and Epidemiology Department. It's still in progress and being analyzed as currently. Consent forms will need to be given by study participants. Thank you so much.
This concludes our fourth panel. We extend our gratitude to Ms. Rivero for moderating, and we thank Ms. Ketzel for sharing her research with us today. Please remember to post your questions on our live Embassy of Belize, Republic of China, Taiwan's Facebook chat, and please state which presenter you are directing your questions to. Thank you. Now, we will be having a 10-minute intermission to answer questions on university scholarships and self-financing in Taiwan. We will have Ms. Elma Chun and Mr. Asher Kanto to answer your questions.
Intermission. Oh, Lord. Oh, my God.
Hello.
Elma, what questions have you received?
Hello, good morning, everyone. So the question, I'm going to be addressing two questions today. And the first question that I received was, what do the university scholarship entail? So normally when you're on a university scholarship, it depends on which university you're attending. For example, at National Zhongjing University, the university where I'm currently attending, this university scholarship, it covers my tuition fees, it covers my dormitory fees, and it provides some stipend. And it depends because also in other universities, they might cover tuition, they might cover your they might cover your dorm fees, and they might provide you with monthly living stipend. Unfortunately, when you're a university scholarship student, you might need to work. So this brings us to the second question. Can we work while being scholarship recipients? Yes, the question is yes. When you're both Taiwan, Mufa, or university scholarship recipients, you can apply to work within Taiwan. Now, what type of jobs will you be able to get? Well, the easiest job for Belizeans in Taiwan are English teaching jobs. They pay relatively well, and you can work up to 20 hours a week on a student working permit. And this 20 hours a week is more than enough to help you sustain a wonderful study life and to keep with your studies as well. Now, some students were asking, well, some participants were asking whether school scholarships cover your flight tickets. Unfortunately, at my university, our scholarships do not cover your flight. And I'm not aware of any university that will be covering your flight from Belize to Taiwan for your school scholarship. So my biggest suggestion is for you to, one, be noticeable of the university that you're applying to. Two, know exactly what it is that the scholarship entails. You need to ask your questions from the beginning. Make sure you know exactly what it is that they're going to be giving you with the scholarship. Three, identify how much money you spend on a day-to-day basis. Because as a student like me, because I live outside the campus, my monthly living stipend might be a bit higher than students who live within dormitory conditions. So my suggestion are those three things. Yeah. Now I'm going to ask Asher. Asher, can you let them know what questions you receive with regards to self-finance studies? Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Belize. Good night, Belize. This evening, I have two questions. This morning for me, sorry, I have two questions that I would like to address. The first one being, let's see, from Ryan. It says, what are some recommendations in terms of financing, clothing, etc. The first thing that jumps out to me is that I would like to tell you, we do have winter in Taiwan. A lot of us come over here not expecting it to become as cold as it gets in December, January, February. So one thing I will advise for you is to bring at least one jacket. one jacket would, a decent jacket would suffice. And then you can, when you're here, you can try to get something else. In terms of the necessary funds that you would need as a self-sustained student, as an independent student, my recommendation is that when you, upon arriving, you have enough to cover your national health insurance and also your first semester of school. As per my experience, I have to be able to pay for my first semester and my insurance after each break. So it's necessary for me to always have that amount of cash available before the semester starts. So that's in summer breaks, I need to have that cash available, and in winter breaks, I need to have that cash available. Cash varies per university. In terms of, from my school currently, it's approximately 3,000 Belize dollars per semester. Now, another question that I would like to address comes about studying at Kunshan University to do 1 year of Chinese. Now, the school, there are different ways you can do Chinese at schools. You can do it in an intensive program, which is, it's nonstop throughout. You don't take much breaks. So they would tell you to pay one fee and you go straight through. It's a year, and it's quite intense, but it's good. If you need to, if they're asking you to have that money ready, then I strongly suggest that you get in contact with their Office of International Affairs and you confirm with them. Other than that, I will also extend to anyone who has questions about these topics to get in contact with me, and I will be more than willing to help in terms of finding out more information on your behalf and so forth. Another question is what it's like to have to work and teach, work and go to school at the same time. You can manage, but it's something that helps you to be able to live financially stable here in Taiwan. I myself work approximately 14 hours a week, and I also go to school. So once you learn to manage your time, once you can manage your time, you're able to live comfortably and cover all your expenses, and also be able to not just pass your classes, but excel at them. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Canto and Ms. Chun. We are sure that your answers will be beneficial to our viewers today. We would like to once again remind you that you can visit the Belize Taiwan Association's Facebook page and the Taiwan Embassy in Belize's website for more information and to ask any other questions. And with that, we continue with the first annual Belize Taiwan Academic Conference, Dialogues of Innovation and Ingenuity. We will now be having our final panel of the day. We encourage our viewers to post their questions on our Embassy of Belize, Republic of China, Taiwan Facebook live chat. We encourage your engagement for our question and answer session. Our fifth panel is themed Education Challenges and Higher Education Systems, and we invite Mr. Manolo Munoz, who is pursuing his master's degree in Educational Leadership and Management Development at National Zhongzheng University, and who will serve as the moderator for our last panel today. Mr. Munoz, we open the floor to you.
Much obliged, Mr. Castillo, Master of Ceremonies. And a pleasant good morning, Taiwan, and a wonderful good night, Belize. It's a pleasure and honor to introduce the panelists for this segment. To begin, the first presenter is Kenya Collier Chavez, a proud Belizean, originally from the Esperanza village in the Cayo district. She has her associate's and bachelor's degree in education from the University of Belize and Galen University. Working in at the primary school level for over 8 years, she enjoys inspiring and motivating her students to reach their ultimate goals. As the 2020 valedictorian of Galen University, Kenya aspires to one day be a dean in higher education. As a mom and sister, she uses her success to encourage excellence to those closest to her. Please Put your hands together for Ms. Kenya Collier Chavez.
Thank you so very much, Manolo. Good morning, Taiwan, and good evening, Belize. It is my pleasure to be with you here today. As an educator for the past 8 years at the primary school level, particularly at the middle division, I have noted some of the weaknesses within our standardized testing system, and thus today my presentation will look at perceptions of why teachers feel the need to assist students on standardized tests, and it will look at systematic pressures. So for the research issue, it is to determine the perceptual factors and the reasons why teachers feel the need to, are pressured to assist students on standardized tests. And the standardized test that I'm going to be focusing on for this research is the diagnostic test administered at the middle division known as the BJAT. To note, this research was a collaboration between myself and a colleague from Colombia, and it had 4 questions. The first one, what is the importance of getting high scores in standardized tests in Belize and Colombia? The second one, what is the most common clues used in teacher academic dishonesty during standardized testing? The third question, what are the main perceptual factors that influence teachers to commit academic misconduct in standardized testing of their students? And the last question, what might be some of the unintended consequences of teacher academic dishonesty during standardized testing, and how might this be improved? So in terms of the literature review, considering the time, I only accumulated a few for this, for the purpose of this presentation. So as stated by Pocket and Black 2008, assessment should 1, determine individual developmental needs, strengths, and aspirations, and 2, analyze curriculum content and teaching strategies, and make needed adjustment to ensure students' growth and success. Considering these 2 reasons, standardized tests should be used to assist individual students, pinpoint challenges and weaknesses, and analyze current curriculum content and strategies. Nevertheless, in Belize and Colombia, teachers are pressured to ensure that students perform above average, and thus more and more teachers feel the need to assist students using clues to perform better on these standardized tests. And as explained before, the BJAT. As Peroni 1991 explains, standardized tests are the most widely used instrument to measure students' learning and across districts and states, and this is for the entire world. Thus, this exerts a powerful hold on the classroom experience, and this experience takes account both the teacher's experience and the student's experience. One of the advantages, though, of standardized testing, according to the literature from Smith 2000, is that it is extolled by the government as a powerful lever for getting schools to do their jobs. One of the disadvantages, however, is a concern stated by Guskey 2007, where he looked at some of the perception people had about the results of these tests and how these perceptions affected both teachers and students. And in the end, many teachers are negatively pressured for their students to perform well on artificial bias time-consuming assessment. As I said before, these are only some of the advantages and the disadvantages that my research factored in. The methodology of this research, well, it was qualitative in nature. It had, it included interview questionnaires, and a total of 10 teachers engaged in this particular study, 3 from Colombia and 7 from Belize. From the results of the questionnaire, we did a supplementary supplementary questions to address some of the major concerns, and it implored purposive sampling. So how was the data analyzed? The method of data analysis, well, this qualitative research utilized something known as thematic coding analysis. And as a result, the interview were coded and themes were taken out. After those themes were taken out, we used triangulation to compare our data interpretation, which helped us to better analyze the data and the findings we gathered from the respondents. Let's look at some of the results of the questions, of the 4 questions that were presented. The first question, what is the importance of getting high scores in standardized tests in Belize and Colombia? And the findings were broken down into 3 categories, as you can see below, at the national level, at the school level, and at the class level. At the national level, the findings reveal that it is important due to 1, competitive ranking status among schools, 2, assessment approval for students, and 3, schools to maintain a good image or a good public image. But at the school level, these tests are very important in that it provides incentives that increase student enrollment, but it reduces academic development anxiety and reduces competition uneasiness. At the class level, it reduces teacher efficacy worry, how good the teacher feels he or she is performing. It reduces performance satisfaction anxiety by students, but it also is important for follow-up interventions. The results of research question number 2, and this one really stood out to me because, as I said before, this is a collaboration between myself and a colleague from Colombia. The question was, what are the most common clues used in teacher academic dishonesty during standardized testing? And some of the clues that the participants indicated was repeating and reviewing the items before the test, provided sample problems, pinpointing to the chart on the walls, asking students to recheck the question, and even using the elimination method to allow students to make changes. And this brings me to the results of research question number 3. Research question number 3 looked at what are some of the perceptual factors that have forced teachers in Belize and Colombia to assist students on standardized tests. And as the results show, as the coded findings below show, some of the reasons, some of the top reasons includes fear, parental pressure, administrative pressure, competition concern, and assessment disconnection. And for the last research question number 4, which seeks to give us some of the recommendations that we need as teachers, as policymakers, and even recommendation to the government of Belize. What might be some of the unintended consequences of teacher academic dishonesty during standardized testing, and how might this be improved? So as you can see the results below from the coding analysis, those suggestions include increased teacher training in assessment. And we know that the government of Belize have been doing this for a while, but teachers feel that the need for this to be increased at the national level. Individualized assessment to cater to the needs of all learners. Alternative supervision to minimize the giving of clues. And this includes Ministry of Education supervision, because for the past 3 years or 2 years, what we have noticed is that the administration of the BJAT has been done by school level, as opposed to having the MOE direct supervision. Another recommendation is better textbook alignment. So the textbooks in Belize have to be better aligned with the curriculum. And the last one is one that I really, really like, and increase incentives and resources for poor performing schools. So for them to be able to improve on some of the results that the diagnostic test is providing. I would like to leave you with a quote that says, failure is not the opposite of success, it's a part of success. And again, it was a pleasure presenting today. Thank you.
The educational sector in Belize will surely benefit from your paper, Ms. Kenya Collier Chavez. Thank you. Our next presenter is a proud Corosalenia. She was a chemistry teacher at the Corozal Community College. Currently, she is still an educator here in Taiwan as an English teacher, since she believes that investing in education is the best thing to do. Her long-term goal is to become a Minister of Education in Belize. At this juncture in her life, Elma is enrolled in the Educational Leadership and Management Development PhD program at the National Zhongzheng University. Ladies and gentlemen, netizens, let us warmly welcome Ms. Elma Chun.
Thank you, Manolo. Good morning, Taiwan. Good night, Belize. Today, I will be presenting on the internationalization of Taiwan's higher education institutions, and this is based on a Belizean experience. So my presentation today was divided into 5 sections, and I'm going to quickly get into the first part, which is the introduction. So a quick research background. Let's talk about the education in Belize. So what are the barriers to higher education in Belize? Well, the barriers to higher education in Belize, and I focus on 3 main barriers, are the access. There are only 11 junior colleges available in Belize and 3 universities, namely the University of Belize, Galen University, and the University of West Indies. So Belizeans do not really have access to higher education. The second is limited programs. Should a student want to pursue a program such as a doctoral program or even engineering program, they do not have access to these type of program in Belize. And the third one is cost. If you notice, most of the universities in Belize are located in the Belize and the Cayo districts. And so students who are in Corozal or Orange Walk may need to relocate to these areas, and this can be very costly. So let's talk about the Belize-Taiwan diplomatic relationship. Well, to begin with, the Belize and Taiwan, they became allies in 1989. And since the late 1990s, Belizean students have been offered scholarship opportunities to come and pursue their degrees in Taiwan. And so far, as of 2020, when my research was done, over 400 students had been recipients of these scholarships, namely the Icdf scholarship and the Taiwan Mufa scholarships. Currently, there are over 500 Belizean students who have been recipients of these scholarships, and over 300 Belizeans are living in Taiwan. So my research yielded 4 research questions. The first one is, what are the reasons for Belizean students choosing to study in Taiwan? The second is, what are the challenges that are faced by Belizean students when they are studying in Taiwan's higher education system? The third, what international approaches are being used by Taiwan's institutions? And the last one are, what are the benefits and risk of internationalization in Taiwan's higher education institutions? A quick look at my literature review. Well, to understand my study, you need to understand what is internationalization. And I'm going to take the definition by Jane Knight, based on her 2003 research. And she explained that the internationalization of higher education is a process of integrating an international and an intercultural dimension into the teaching, research, and service function of the institution. In small term change, internationalization is the process that universities go through so that they can become international universities. And the way for them to become international universities is by dialoguing with professors, with students, and to learn how to develop an international, but also an intercultural dimension. My framework that I use was actually developed by me and my professor, and we focus on the push-pull mechanisms of internationalization. We believe that internationalization has a push and a pull effect, where the students are in the middle. So the push-pull has to do with the institution and the approaches that they take to internationalization, as you can see on the right-hand side. And the outcomes of the approaches that they take is what will produce benefits or risk for these students. These benefits and risk may influence the experience that students experience while studying abroad. And these individual experience can be academical, economical, social, and cultural. So my research methodology, well, my research utilized a quantitative design. And what I did was I created a questionnaire, and this questionnaire was sent out to undergraduate Belizean students who are registered in various programs across Taiwan. I had a total of
I had about 80% of the undergraduate population participating in my research. And as you can see, based on the demography, majority of these participants were males. They mostly range around 20 to 24 years old. Majority is of Icdf scholarship. And I'm going to get a little bit more into this as I go through my presentation. So my discussion, what did I find? Well, for research question number 1, what are the reasons for Belizean students choosing to study in Taiwan? I found that the main reasons for students to study in Taiwan are these 4 main reasons, which are to pursue a quality education, to enhance their professional competitive edge because of the availability of scholarships, and to develop their academic research capabilities. As a student in Taiwan, I can tell you that all of these 4 questions or these 4 reasons are actually reasons why I have remained in Taiwan. The second and the last ones, these other 5 pointers, although there are reasons why Belizean students might choose to study in Taiwan, they were not the main reasons. So these include Taiwan's safety and freedom, experiencing a new foreign life, the standards of living, to learn Mandarin Chinese, and the cultural adaptation. So these ones, they didn't really have a significant effect on students' reasons for studying abroad. What challenges are faced by Belizean students when studying abroad? The biggest challenges that Belizean students are facing when they are studying abroad in Taiwan is finding help with questions or concern, understanding course content, meeting academic demands, and becoming involved in campus activities. Now, based on prior research, we found that sometimes when you're coming from the western part of the world and you're coming into the eastern part, the learning styles and learning content of students, they may not align. So students may find these 4 challenges. They're quite common amongst international students. The least challenges faced by students were the daily cultural shocks. Apparently, Belizeans are not culture shocked in Taiwan, are not experiencing daily culture shock in Taiwan anymore, and making Taiwanese friends. What international approaches are being used by Taiwan's higher education institutions? So I found that all approaches are being used by Taiwan's institutions. The problem is to what extent are they using these approaches? So students, within my research, we found that although Taiwan institutions are using these approaches, there is still room for improvement. You know, we're always able to improve. So yeah. And the 4th one, what are the benefits and risks of internationalizations in Taiwan? The benefit that it enhances by universities becoming internationalized, they can improve their university's prestige. Internationalization will allow the quality of teaching and the learning in their universities to be improved. This is what Belizean students believe. They believe that internationalization will enhance universities' international cooperation and capacity building, and enhance universities' curriculum, increase awareness of international students in the university, increase universities' networking. And the biggest risk is that it creates excessive competition with other higher education institutions, lead to grade drain, increase xenophobia and racism on campus. So my conclusion, the biggest reasons for students to be studying in Taiwan is scholarship opportunities and to get quality education. The challenges is the teaching and the learning styles, and I recommend that there is a Taiwan that the academic satisfaction is improved. All approaches are being used. There is need for more effort in the activity and process approaches, and the benefits outweighs the risk. That's what we found. And the biggest risk to internationalizations based on Belizeans' experience is the brain drain. And brain drain refers to Belizean students who are remaining in Taiwan even after they have received their degree. And I mean, that's really sad to think about. You know, you come to Taiwan, you have a PhD degree in education, and then you don't return home. It's quite amusing. And my implications and suggestions for future students, I suggest that you guys become aware of the education style and the learning systems in Taiwan. So become aware of the entire cultural aspect of Taiwan before you apply to study in Taiwan. So the emphasis to assist students with culture shock and to do yearly feedback with students and provide these results. We need to be aware of what our students are experiencing. And lastly, to the universities is to include other students, for future research is to include other students from countries outside the Asia region and to conduct mixed method research. Thank you guys so much for listening to my presentation. And if you have any questions, you can always contact me. My Facebook, my Instagram, and my email address are there. Thank you.
Following her maxim of investing in education, Ms. Chun is adding to the educational vault of Belize. Here she is, Ms. Chun. Our last presenter is from San Felipe Village, Orangewood District. He was a high school educator in Belize and is currently a researcher and PhD candidate in the Educational Leadership and Management Development at the National Zhongzheng University in Chiayi, Taiwan. He holds his birth country Belize dearly in his heart and hopes to one day be able to demonstrate his love for country by ably contributing significantly to the development of Belize's educational system. Ladies and gentlemen, let us embrace Mr. Amelio Ketzel.
Good afternoon, Belize. Good morning, Taiwan. This morning, what I will be presenting to you is my paper on higher education trajectories of Taiwanese women in STEM, which is a longitudinal analysis that is co-authored by myself along with Professor Hu and Professor Hu. Now, what we're doing here is that we're looking at Taiwanese women in STEM, particularly because STEM in this technological era has been something really important, particularly for the provision of human resources. I mean, STEM employments are actually giving a lot of salaries, high salaries when compared to other professions. There's also the need to create a socially equal environment within the STEM profession. So therefore, looking at the access that the people have and the rewards that they might get by professionally participating in STEM professions is something really important. Now, what are we looking for in terms of the general world perspective? Well, women generally around the world have more higher participation in terms of college, right? Much more than men. That means more women go to higher education than men. But what is interesting is that even though more women go to higher education, right, there are less women that are actually pursuing STEM majors and eventually getting a career in the STEM field. Now, what might this happen or how might this transform is basically if we look at the higher education expansion. For example, if there is an expanded higher education system, will that create opportunities? Now, what I'm looking at, or what me and my co-authors and I are looking at, is basically Taiwan, right? Over the course of 25 years, from 1992 to 2018, Taiwan has greatly expanded its higher education system. In terms of students, you can see that from about 250,000 students to about 1 million students over the course of 25 years, and that's quite impressive. When you look at the gross enrollment ratio for women specifically, because the study looks at women, right? In 1992, the gross enrollment ratio was about 15%, and that increased dramatically to about 90% over the course of the 25 years. But what is much more interesting is when you compare that to men, more Taiwanese women are in higher education, 10% more than men, right? So, and why Taiwan? Well, something important to note is that Taiwan is an important producer of STEM research within the Asian region. And what is happening here is that it is important to know what Taiwan is doing and what lessons can we learn from Taiwan. So basically, we're looking at whether the expansion of tertiary education in Taiwan has provided more access and more opportunities to Taiwanese women in STEM. We're also trying to see whether after they enroll in the STEM courses, whether it influences their participation in the labor market or whether they experience some kind of discrimination, right? Now, before we actually answer all of these questions, we need to make sure that we understand the context. And before the 1990s, Taiwan was really having an underdeveloped educational system in terms of higher education. There were not many upper secondary schools, And those that were there were mostly vocational in nature. So what happened is that during that transformation period of the 1990s, Taiwan transformed its upper secondary schools and opened more academic fields so that more people can access science-related subjects. There was also the transformation of the junior colleges. The junior colleges, which are two-year institutions, were transformed into four-year universities, meaning that more people could actually access university education and eventually go ahead and produce, or not produce, but get a STEM degree. But then, this is the education expansion aspect, but there is also the aspect from the theory part, which means that from the human capital perspective, people access education based on the rewards that they can get from it, right? And generally speaking, society actually views STEM fields actually as a more male-based field. And that influences what women would study. Basically, you see far less women engineers, far less women doctors, and we need to try to understand that based on the human capital theory, right, women would choose a different occupational path based on what they perceive as beneficial for them within the society. When you look at the next part, the schools also make some kind of structural barriers for women to access STEM education. There has been research that proves that that when teachers teach science, for example, teachers tend to give more priority to men, and therefore they give most of their attention to the males in the science field because inherently they feel like STEM-related courses are actually masculine in nature. And so what this creates is a chilly climate, and there's like some kind of structural barriers that actually makes the women just feel like unwelcome and they just leave the system. There's also the issue of early tracking, which I think is much more relevant to Belize. And in Taiwan, it happens that when students are asked to make a choice in high school, right? In Belize, for example, they choose an academic track for sciences or they choose the business track. But what happens there is that when they study the business track, there is not much opportunity to explore more STEM-related courses. So early tracking, or at the point when they have to make an educational decision, they're already choosing something that will eventually influence where they will end up working. I am not saying that they cannot change, but the opportunity that students have when they choose non-academic subjects makes them just eventually end up working in other professions rather than the STEM professions. So what did we look at? Basically, my study is a historical analysis based on 30 years of data compiled by the Ministry of Education. And we looked at just some basic statistics, including frequency weights, descriptive statistics, and we used data to analyze the data. And this is what I would like to share with you, okay? When you look at the results, graph A on the upper left, all right? The red numbers is actually showing to you the growth of the academic field in terms of males only. And if you can see, before education expansion, there were about 30% men studying science or STEM-related courses. But as the time progressed, men actually went from about 30% to about 42%, right? So that's a very good increase. But what is impressive is the graph B from for the females. When you look at the education expansion, what this created was more opportunities for female to access more STEM-related courses, and it greatly increased from about 23% to about close to 50%, and that is a huge improvement in terms of the female population in Taiwan. Now, when you look at the lower graphs at C and D, the male graduates at the university level, right? What is happening here is that at C and D, the number of bachelor degree related courses, or the graduates that came out from the university, there was a great increase to about 60% up to 2010 after education expansion. However, that has been decreasing a little bit, and which is showing to you that for some reason, men are actually not choosing a lot of STEM related courses as they used to do before around 2010. That's just 10 years ago. In fact, if you look at the red dot that I'm showing there, a lot of men are actually choosing, about 42% are choosing bachelor's non-STEM. So basically, men in Taiwan are actually not being influenced by the gender role socialization that women actually face in Taiwan. Now, for the female graduates in the university level, you can see that at the beginning, it was around 8%. Later on, after education expansion, it slightly increased by less than 1%. And now around 2007, it has plateaued. That means there has been a steady curve, 25%, right? So what is happening now? Based on this change in the structure of the system, if you can see now, after graduating, there has been an improvement in terms of how many women are actually found compared to men in the STEM workforce. For example, after the education expansion, there are about 1.5 men to 1 woman working in STEM fields after graduating. And what is important, if you look at the second graph to your right, is that women are actually matching. That means they're actually working in the fields that they study for, and men, the one for men is decreasing. That is solid black line. So women in Taiwan are doing something quite interesting. Now, the conclusions that I have is that women are actually facing some kind of barriers in terms of upper secondary education because less are graduating from university. And this could possibly be because of the selection bias, right? So that means that gender equality cannot be guaranteed in higher education, but it improves in the labor market. My paper is actually published next week. So if you would like to get a copy of it, you can scan the QR code, find it online, or you can send me an email and you can actually read it from the book later on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Munoz, for your time in moderating, and thank you to the presenters for their very insightful and noteworthy presentations. I believe that Belize can gain greatly from all of them, and thank you for your time. We will be having our question and answer segment, and as promised, we will start with the questions for panel 1 and proceed chronologically. Panelists, please be reminded that each question is allotted 2 minutes, including the time used by the MC to read the questions asked to you. Thank you. And we move on to panel number 1, to Ms. Sadie Ketzel. And your question is, what recommendations or advice would you give to young Belizean females who aspire to become future politicians?
Thank you for that question, Amador. That is a very important question. The recommendation I would give based on my paper is to start your community service early. The community needs to start knowing you, knowing your skills, that you are capable of taking leadership. Another recommendation would be ask other past and current female leaders what are their experience, get to know the background, and know that there is a challenge ahead, but it's not impossible and you can achieve it.
Okay, I'm sure the females out there are very happy to hear your response. Our second question is, which recommendations would you introduce to primary school, high school, and finally university level by Ms. Shani Gentle on our Facebook Live?
Okay, so in this regard, at primary school level, we need to start changing the mentality of the kids when it comes to gender roles. We need to start telling them that women can be leaders. At the high school level, there is high school elections, and at the university level, there's also university student body elections. At these elections, we could include gender quotas. This gender quota is number of women running for office. This will start to change the mentality of everyone to see more women in power. Another thing would be implementing it in our social studies curriculum. Look at other countries with women who are in leadership. And this would also contribute greatly to having more women in office.
I'm sure that administrators, hopefully listening to our podcast, our live stream, can implement this or give it some consideration, as it is very important. Moving on to our second panelist, Ms. Delmi Cornelio. You have a question from Ms. Carla Lozano, and she asked through our YouTube live stream. And the question reads, what are the procedures taken to stop the stereotypes against women becoming CEO managers of a company?
Thank you, Amador, and thank you, Carla, for your question. It's really a good question. As I mentioned before, this is a systematic societal issue that needs to be attacked from the grassroots level, and the involvement of education stakeholders is very important. Getting them to promote gender equality in schools, promoting STEM career path for both boys and girls. These would be like a long-term project or action. When it comes to short-term actions within the organization, as I mentioned before, it is very important that we start to talk about it within all levels in the organization. provide trainings, mentorship that will promote women mobility within the organization. Also, as I mentioned before, parental leave is very important, and I quote, paternal leave, because we usually have maternal leave. So having maternal leave is already creating a stereotype that women should be the ones to take care of the family. Indeed, it should be both. So including both maternal and paternal leave within the organization would also help to reduce these gender stereotypes that we have. Thank you.
Very insightful. Thank you too. And those are very insightful and forward-thinking suggestions towards the question. Now, very briefly, if you can tell us, what are the major similarities among the attitudes toward female managers?
So here we compare females versus males perception of women managers in both countries. So there is one similarity, is that women in both countries have a higher or a better image of women managers. So Belize and Taiwan.
Okay, thank you to our panelists from panel 1. As we move to panel 2, we have Ms. Delaney Broster, and your question comes from Mr. Geraldo Puck, and the question reads, considering the farming spectrum in Belize, what suggestions or recommendations can be made to improve farming practices and implementing these smart practices, especially from small farmers, considering the current trends during COVID times where financing is difficult?
Okay, thank you, Amador, and thank you, Geraldo, for your question. Financing is always a challenge, especially for small farmers, well, access to it. And there are valid reasons for this as well. Therefore, I can't stress enough collaboration, which a much needed shift in our culture and mindset. And let me be specific. I did a study on Circular last semester, and the CEO did not tell me this, but from analyzing his responses and doing literature review on the company itself, I knew that when those 10 farmers got together, that cooperative culture was a key success factor. So don't be afraid to partner with others and build a team, and don't pay much mind to others benefiting more from this sort of partnerships, but focus on making your service more innovative with your own talent and your own story to grab a niche market. And even in the ICT industry here where I work, I see competitors partnering with each other, and that sort of culture I get to see makes sense. This is why they say if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So it really makes sense to collaborate and partner with others, even your competitors.
Yes, thank you. And I'm sure Mr. Puck will be happy to hear your response. And it's very important suggestion you are giving. Now, for your second question, what policies can be put in place in order to assist with smart farming in Belize?
Okay, well, those policies in Belize, I see it's very up to date. It goes to 2030. So what I would recommend, because they're great policies, it includes climate smart policies in financing and market mobilization, and it's excellent. However, just the practical part is necessary.
Okay, thank you very much. And as we move on to Ms. Lesbia Giselle Cruz, and your question comes from Ms. Tanya Thompson, and it says, what are the soil changes in soil properties?
Thank you. Thank you very much for that question. As I mentioned in my presentation, there were some changes in the soil from the addition of these high concentrations of microplastics. And some of these changes are in pH and CEC. And I focus on these because these are very important for the survival of soil organisms, the overall organic decomposition, and also for nutrients. If these are changed just a little bit in soil, then there is drastic changes on organisms and also the entire nutrient cycling that is occurring in soil. So that's the reason pH and EC, the changes are very important to address in this study.
Yes, and I'm sure researchers such as your own are what are going to be the catalysts to avoid these types of changes. Now, your second question reads, how can your research be used to improve Belize's agricultural sector?
So my research is more focusing on scientific proof that there is this type of pollution that is occurring from the agricultural practices, such as the use of mulching. Now, my research will help the country to develop like strategies or like for maintaining or limit the addition of microplastic into soil, adopting strategies that can use more biodegradable plastic mulching, some of these measures that can limit the input of these pollutants into the soil environment, which eventually will affect the overall soil health that is in our soil systems.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Cruz. Moving on, we have Mr. Solomon Antonio Jr., and your question comes from Ms. Shawnee Gentle from Facebook live chat. And the question says, Mr. Solomon, you said you did hundreds of cross-section experiments. Did you get a chance to look at any local one? And what was the findings?
Thank you, Ms. Shawnee, for that question. The organism that I used is the Arabidopsis thaliana, which is a model organism that is used in research for plant-based research. So what that does is, because the research is on the basic level where we're finding out the science of it itself, so we use the model organism to understand the concept, to get the data and so forth, and then that data and that concept that we get, we can then therefore apply it on different organisms to see if it has the same. So not because it happens or shows a certain result in Arabidopsis means that it will be the same for every plant. So further research will then need to be done per specific plant or types of plants to see if the data that we get on Arabidopsis is also applicable on those different plants. So for example, if we want to look at something like different citrus in Belize, then you would need to specifically look at those citrus using the same concept that we developed using Arabidopsis, and then see if that can then therefore give you the same result, and then therefore be able to use the citrus as the organism specifically. But right now it's just on the basic level where we are trying to understand the science of it and the foundation of it, and then therefore can then in the future we can apply it for different organisms.
Yes, I'm sure they can use your research as a foundation if they would like to expand to this. Now, your second question comes from Ms. Kamira Williams, and it says, hi, Mr. Solomon, why is the VP stage important?
Okay, that's a very good question. The VP stage is important because that is where we see most of the changes happening, where we see there is the change in the ROS in the plant, as well as the mitochondria changes. So when we have the VP stage having different effects, we know that that is a portion that we need to focus on to see what exactly is the effect of our research. And then therefore that will provide us with lots of the answers that we're looking for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Antonio. Now we move on to panel 3, and we have Miss Melody Wagner. And your question comes from our Facebook user, Geraldo Puck. And it says, in regards to steel pan, did you explore expansion as a national instrument, considering that steel pan has to coexist with the traditional programs like Garifuna drums, marimba, and Mayan harp? How can we coexist together rather than apart in setting an identity for Belize?
Okay, thank you for that question, Mr. Puck. So first and foremost, my study didn't look at it as a national instrument. I was just applying what exists in terms of social programming, and I looked at pandemonium because that's something that I was actively involved with, an organization that I knew intimately about. I like the idea that he presents the other instruments that exist in Belize. So in order for the framework that I propose in this research to be applied, we have to identify what exists in terms of the Garifuna drums and the marimba, which are essentially like national instruments within the Belizean scope, and see how we could institute vocational programming that targets and markets those instruments and helps with promoting that national identity, like he rightly points out.
Yes, and I'm sure that your research has can pick the interest of any future research in order to sort of take his question into a research topic on its own. Your second question is, how can we keep steel pan culture preserved in Belize?
Okay, so pretty much essentially what this vocational framework presents is that opportunity to implement and apply that. So we already have the communities exist, we have interests, and I'm trying to see how we could make that sustained, because at this point we're importing the instruments and then players are doing it as a hobby. So by having the vocational program exist, it is going to enforce a platform that can facilitate the income earning and consistent sustainability of programs.
That would be very important in taking it beyond what it is as just talent, but rather, as you mentioned, an income and a livelihood for them. Thank you very much for your responses, Ms. Wagner. We move on to Mr. Kevin Berganza, and your question comes from Ishmael Rash. And it says, you talked about colonialism, but never mentioned the Mayan that the Spaniards and Belize is based on. What are your comments on that?
Okay, that's a very nice question. Thank you. So I talked about colonialism mainly because my theoretical framework concerns colonial legacies and, of course, its effects on post-colonial democratic development. However, when it comes to the Maya, I highlighted several Maya uprisings during colonialism and after independence, which somewhat lays a foundation for the rise of social mobilization in Belize. But during colonialism, for example, the movement of British troops often suppressed frequent Maya insurrections, which sparked the ire of the rebels led by, as we know, Marcos Cano. This occurred in the 19th century. And also for the impact of pre-colonial organizations, some scholars pointed out that the persistence of pre-colonial institutions are influenced by cultural norms that manifest themselves as first informal institutions, and then they legitimize. And also the transfer of colonial institutions is somewhat conditional to the pre-existing levels of urbanization, constraints on political behavior, as I have mentioned, and colonial labor markets integration. So for instance, some studies have analyzed the institutional role of British resettling the Mayas in reservation that required an alcalde or chief, which also occurred in Belize. They used it to govern, especially, and they had already existed in the pre-colonial communities. So this ensured effective colonial policies and exacerbated further constraints on the Maya political arrangements, which is quite evident today as well.
Thank you very much and for your informative response. And I'm sure that that answers Mr. Rash's question. Your second question is, how does Belize compare to the region when it comes to its history and development?
That's a good one. That's most frequently asked. Okay, thank you. So we have to keep in mind that Belize is geographically a part of Latin America and the Caribbean regions. So there are two regions that we must remember. However, historically, culturally, and socially, it is more inclined and integrated with the English-speaking Caribbean due to their shared colonial heritage, which also makes it a part of the Caribbean Commonwealth. Also, compared to Latin America, it is they share some cultural aspects.
Okay, and I'm sure your paper in detail can answer those questions for their reference. We move on to panel 4, and we have Mr. Wani Morgan. Mr. Morgan, your question comes from Sil Morgan, and it says, how can your research be applied to Belize? And how do you foresee yourself applying this gained knowledge and skills to contribute to Belize's development?
Well, to answer that question, my research at this stage cannot be directly applied to Belize until a plastic injection molding industry has been established in Belize. However, the research itself is not the most important component. It's the fundamental knowledge and the domain knowledge that I've gathered throughout my studies here in Taiwan. And mainly my research, the base idea of my research focuses on automation and mass production. So what I'm aiming to do, going back to Belize, is to use this knowledge to develop smart technologies for small-scale manufacturers, allowing them to increase productivity and increase yield, product yield, thereby maximizing their profits margin. And with that, we can locally produce high quality products that are comparable with that of our currently imported products, thereby reducing the demand for imported goods.
Mr. Morgan, I'm sure that with this knowledge that you've gained, going back to Belize, Belize is very lucky to have you in order to start this process or this idea in the country. Your second question also reads, would your research be, how do you see it being implemented? I know you just mentioned that it's still an idea and at an early stage, but for your research, do you see that it can be developed further, or what are some recommendations?
Okay, well, currently, actually, like I mentioned, the research has been patented, and we're working in collaboration with Mufa, which is a leading producer of plastic injection molding machinery. And so the aim is within the next year or 2 years is to get this system into a small microcontroller, a standalone device smaller than your cell phones that can be mounted onto the injection molding machine and determine its quality so that we can commercialize it and hopefully make some money.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Morgan. And for the next question, we have Ms. Ketzel. In regards to exploring HIV services in Belize, would it also be important to explore where PLHIV prefers seeking services along with the reasons why they chose that particular location, etc., in regards to be able to find what they are doing and use it as a pilot for other locations to increase their enrollment?
Okay, I think that thank you for that question. Also, based on literature, we have answered that question. Community-based services are most effective and preferred, okay, such as adherence counselors and community outreach. So those are the preferred services. Secondly, through innovative ways, they have adopted digital health services. So decentralizing hospital-based services to these newer ways. Secondly, my research focused not on services, but also on how does the disease, because remember, it's a transition from terminal to chronic disease now. So that's what my research is mostly focused on rather than on services. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And your second question, in which ways do you think that COVID-19 has negatively impacted the HIV population in Belize?
Okay, so there are numerous research that have found that clinical visits have been impacted by psychological consequences as well, such as stress and a lot of overwhelming factors have been found. Insecurity of food and housing and unemployment have increased. That's what current research has found. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We move on to our final panel questions. We have Ms. Kenya Collier Chavez, and your question is, should Belize do away with the standardized test altogether? And what is your position on that?
Thank you so very much. And that is a very important question. It's also a very interesting question. Subjectively, this is my opinion. I would say no to that question because standardized testing, whether diagnostic or national, provides valuable information on areas for improvement at the individual level, at the school level, and at the national level. It also allows us to examine the gaps between the different curriculums, such as the written curriculum, the taught curriculum, and the assessed curriculum. Third, remember that standardized tests, according to the literature that I presenting, is the most commonly used assessment around the world. So we need to be able to, as Belizean educators, prepare our students for opportunities to be proficient in international assessment like PISA, which is becoming more popular, and even regional assessments like the CHC and the ATLIB. So in my opinion, it's not an option to eliminate the administration of standardized tests because we simply cannot run from it, but we just need to improve the weaknesses that exist within our current system. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we know, any system always has room for improvement, and your research opens that platform for discussion in order to improve that section of the system. Next, we have Ms. Elma Chun, and your question is, what are some ways to make internationalization be more about the students?
Well, that was my biggest concern at the end of my research. Being an international student in Taiwan, I was wondering whether your feedback would be really genuine or really reflect your experiences in Taiwan, mostly because a lot of us are here on scholarships, whether it's Icdf, Mufa scholarship, or university scholarship. So how exactly will your experience be reflected within your feedback? So my biggest, that's the reason why I'm currently doing research on the true experiences that not only Belizean, but other students are experiencing while studying in Taiwan. I believe that universities and all of these different entities that are offering scholarship opportunities, they need to start investing more in understanding the real student experience.
That's very important for the Taiwanese administrators at different universities and different educational levels to understand that. Thank you very much, Ms. Chun. And for our final panelist, Mr. Amelio Ketzel, your question is, how can Belize improve its STEM education and women in STEM?
Thank you, Amador, for the question. I think basically what we need to do would be a mental change, because like I said, inherently STEM education has been more male-oriented subject. So therefore, we need to change the way we teach science. We need to change the way we look at female engineers. We need to change our mentality on how we perceive women in the labor market in terms of STEM. Because when we see, for example, a woman doctor compared to a man doctor, maybe sometimes we choose to go to a male doctor, and then the women might see, well, it's not giving me the returns that I'm looking for. So it requires a mental shift, but it also requires that our curriculum encourages women to access STEM education, and we support them later on in the labor market by providing opportunities for them to get a job. So I think that's how we should approach it as a developing nation. Thank you, Amador.
Thank you too, and I'm sure that all our viewers are listening, and it is very important that it is a change on a whole to our entire society for those changes to be made. And that concludes our question and answer segment. Thank you to all our viewers for sending in your questions, and to the panelists for the informative responses. That brings us to the end of the conference. I would like to thank our distinguished guests, to all the viewers, the organizers of the first annual Belize Taiwan Academic Conference, extend their heartfelt gratitude to each individual that has made today's conference a groundbreaking event. To all our viewers, thank you, thank you, thank you. We hope the conference has been educational and informative, and you have enjoyed being with us. To Channel 5, Love FM, Love TV, and the Belize Government Press Office, thank you for being the bridge in making today's conference that is organized in Taiwan available to the Belizean people back home. To the Embassy of Belize in the Republic of China, Taiwan, and the Belize Taiwan Association, thank you for making today's conference a reality. And a special thank you to the Ministry of Education, Culture, Science and Technology of Belize, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of China, Taiwan, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Belize, and the Central American Trade Office for partnering to make this event a groundbreaking one. We look forward to seeing you at this event next year. Good night to those back in Belize. Good day to us here in Taiwan, and a great day to our viewers wherever they are around the globe watching us in any of our platforms. Stay safe, and God bless you all. Distinguished guests, moderators, and panelists, please join me by turning on your cameras as we wave goodbye to our viewers.
Listen,